Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lynn Keel. Rexford Lynn Keel, commonly known as Lynn Keel, was married to Elizabeth Bess Edwards Keel for more than 20 years. In 2005, Lynn was a truck driver, while Elizabeth worked at Microbac Laboratories. Lynn and Elizabeth lived in a remote house in Nash County, North Carolina. As 2005 ended, they, like many others, were preparing for the new year. However, on January 1, 2006, an unfortunate event occurred. It was a cold day, and the steps outside their house were icy. When Elizabeth stepped outside, she slipped and fell, striking her head on the concrete steps. The injury was severe and ultimately fatal. The medical examiner determined that Elizabeth died from blunt force trauma to the head, and her death was classified as an accident. Elizabeth's sudden death at the age of 42 shocked her husband, relatives, colleagues, and friends. A year later, Lynn Keel decided to move forward with his life. He transitioned from being a truck driver to working in real estate. In 2007, during a work trip to Latin America, Lynn, who was 45 at the time, met Diana, who was 19 years younger than him. Diana, a single mother from Bogota, Colombia, was not only beautiful but also kind. Their relationship blossomed quickly, and inspired by the idea of the American dream, Diana moved to the United States. Diana and Lynn moved into his home in Nash County, where his wife, Elizabeth Keel, had tragically passed away in an accident about a year earlier. Soon after, Diana and Lynn got married, and shortly afterward, they welcomed a son named Max. In 2017, Diana graduated from Nash Community College and started working as an emergency room nurse at Wilson Medical Center. The initial years of their marriage were unremarkable, but over time, their relationship began to decline. Diana confided in her close friend that Lynn was a controlling man who often spoke to her harshly and verbally abused her. The atmosphere in their home was consistently tense. Lynn wouldn't allow Diana to spend extended time alone with anyone. Although she started considering divorce, she felt scared of her husband due to his threats. He used their baby as a means of manipulation, warning her that if she left, he would deport her and she would never see her son again. Diana endured this situation for the sake of her children, but she knew that she also has the limits. In 2019, Diana's daughter from her previous marriage, Laura, was 18 years old. She had graduated from Southern Nash High School and was starting her freshman year at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Meanwhile, 10-year-old Max was living with his parents. Diana worked as a nurse at Wilson Medical Center, where she was well loved and respected by both her patients and colleagues. On March 7, 2019, Diana's mother, Esperanza Prada, who lived in Colombia, received an unexpected message from Diana that said, "Mom, I love you very much." Esperanza was aware that Diana was unhappy in her marriage and wanted to get a divorce, but she also knew that Diana was afraid of her husband. 3 days later, Laura, Diana's daughter, raised the alarm. On March 10th, she sent out a tweet asking for help to locate her mother. The tweet read, "This is unbelievable. You always see this happen to others and never think it could happen to you. My mom is missing. If you have any information, please let me know and retweet this to help spread the word. Thank you." On the same day, Laura contacted the medical center where her mother worked, but none of Diana's colleagues had seen or heard from her in the last 2 days. An employee at the medical center requested a welfare check on Diana after not hearing from her for days. She told that Diana was supposed to work that night and usually arrive 30 minutes early. She normally responded quickly to texts, but this time she hadn't replied. The nurse noted that this was unusual behavior for Diana, which led her to contact the sheriff's office for a welfare check. Diana was a devoted mother who communicated with her family every day, actively engaged on social media, but now her messages were unread and her FaceTime calls went unanswered. When a police officer arrived at the Keel family's home, Lynn was there. It was surprising that his wife's disappearance was reported to the police by her co-workers instead of by him. Lynn told the officer that he last saw Diana 2 days earlier, on March 8, when she left the house. Since her car was still parked outside, this raised more suspicion, prompting the police to bring Lynn in for questioning. When asked where his wife was, 57-year-old Keel said she had gone out to run errands and hadn't returned yet. He noted that she sometimes left for a few days. However, his explanation raised suspicions. The man was released without facing any charges. The police to start a search for Diana. Investigators learned she hadn't used her cell phone or bank cards for several days, raising concern for her safety. Her house is in a secluded area with no neighbors who could assist the police. However, detectives found out that on the morning of March 8, Diana and her partner had a heated argument on their front porch. A courier, who delivered a package to Diana that day, was the last person to see her, apart from Lynn Keel. After interviewing Diana's co-workers, the police learned that she was experiencing problems with her husband. They believed she would never abandon her son or run away. Her main concern about getting a divorce was the fear of losing custody of her 10-year-old son. Every person the detective spoke to pointed to one potential suspect in Diana's disappearance, her husband, Lynn Keel. Early in the investigation, a troubling detail came to light. 2 years before Diana vanished, Lynn had taken out a life insurance policy on her for over $1 million, naming himself as the sole beneficiary. Furthermore, in 2008, sheriff's deputies were called to their home due to a domestic disturbance, but no further action was taken at that time. Just 2 days after the investigation began, the police received a disturbing call. An employee from the North Carolina Department of Transportation reported finding something on Pokes Hole Road. Sadly, the man had discovered Diana's body, which seemed to have been there since the day she went missing. He found it while checking an illegal dumping site. Pokes Hole Road is a dead-end street that leads to farmland. While it was a relief that the body was found, the word relief feels inadequate given the tragic circumstances. It's unclear how long it might have taken for the police to locate Diana's body, which was 30 miles away from her home. Nash County Sheriff Keith Stone shared his sadness about the situation, stating, "Everyone who knew her spoke very well of her. This is a tragic event. What makes it even more heartbreaking is that we now have a 10-year-old child who has lost her mother." He added, "This situation is very difficult. Life is delicate, and seeing a child left without her mother is extremely hard. We have many questions that still need answers, which is why the Nash County Sheriff's Office is approaching this case with compassion, integrity, and commitment. The circumstances surrounding her death are still unclear, but it was evident that foul play was involved." The police identified one primary suspect, Lynn Keel. Upon learning that his wife had been found dead, he expressed surprise. He was taken to the police station for questioning, where he spoke to investigators. Lynn maintained that Diana frequently left for several days but always came back. However, this contradicted statements from Diana's colleagues, family, and friends, who revealed that Lynn tightly controlled her life and even prevented her from seeing her friends. After the interrogation, Lynn was released because the autopsy results were not yet available. Diana's cousin, who lives in Colombia, shared with reporters that Diana moved to North Carolina to pursue the American dream, but instead, it turned into a nightmare. After the medical examiner's report was released, disturbing details about Diana's death emerged. She suffered severe skull fractures and had multiple sharp injuries on the left side of her face and neck. Some of these injuries occurred after her death, suggesting that the attacker may have had a personal vendetta against her. When the police arrived to arrest Lynn and search his home, he had already fled. He was placed on a nationwide wanted list, with reports indicating he might be driving a gold pickup truck and could be dangerous. After being questioned at the police station, Lynn drove his 10-year-old son to his parents' house, took his father's car, and escaped. During a search warrant executed at the home he shared with Diana, authorities confiscated various firearms, including rifles, pistols, and revolvers, as well as swords, a machete, and several knives. Authorities discovered 2 pages from the diary of Diana's 18-year-old daughter in a Dodge Ram owned by Lynn. When the sheriff was asked about the contents of those pages, he said he was not comfortable sharing that information. The search for Lynn was ongoing, and it was revealed that he had left the state, but his exact location was still unknown. Sheriff Stone mentioned that they had received tips regarding Lynn's truck from people in Texas and Florida, but no new information about his capture was confirmed. He urged the public to check local motels and hotels for a pickup truck matching the license plate number provided in a public notice. On March 17, 2019, just 5 days after Diana's body was found, Arizona State Police arrested Lynn, 34 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. He had a large amount of cash and many canned goods, suggesting he intended to cross into Mexico. Following his arrest, he was airlifted to Nash County and faced charges related to his wife Diana's death. Forensic investigators discovered significant evidence that Diana's attack occurred in the bedroom. The prosecutor stated that after taking Diana to a secluded spot, Lynn went to a nearby Walmart and purchased cleaning supplies in an attempt to erase any traces of the crime. In October 2021, Rexford Lynn Keel, 59, pleaded no contest to charges against him in order to avoid a lengthy trial. A no contest plea is similar to a guilty plea, meaning that the defendant accepts responsibility for the charges. Lynn admitted to second-degree murder and first-degree kidnapping. His defense attorneys requested the judge to consider his kidney failure as mitigating factors during sentencing. Diana's mother addressed the court, emphasizing the loss of her daughter and urging women in abusive relationships to seek safety. She appealed to the judge for a strict sentence. Diana's cousin issued a statement from the family expressing gratitude to law enforcement for capturing Lynn, the suspect in Diana's murder. They conveyed their appreciation for the compassion shown by the Nash County Sheriff's Office and the support they had received. The cousin described Diana as an amazing mother, daughter, sister, and friend, noting that her love for her children was boundless and that she brought joy to everyone with her laughter and kindness. They asked everyone to remember Diana and her children with positive thoughts and thanked everyone for their support. Lynn did not share his reasons for committing the crime. It's possible he discovered that Diana was meeting with a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Additionally, there is the matter of the insurance policy worth over $1 million. Under a plea agreement, Lynn was sentenced to 32 to 41 years in prison. Moreover, police are investigating the death of Lynn's first wife, Elizabeth. There are lingering questions about whether her death was truly an accident. Her family has expressed ongoing concerns and sadness regarding her death. In their statement, they noted their sorrow that another life has been lost and that they have always questioned the circumstances surrounding Elizabeth's passing. Stone, a law enforcement official, stated, "We are going to pursue all leads concerning this matter, and we will review the initial incident reports." He added that discussions with the district attorney's office are necessary. Elizabeth is buried in a family plot in Spring Hope. Stone is collaborating with a pathologist and reviewing the evidence, indicating that exhuming Elizabeth's body is a strong possibility. Dr. John Butts, who served as North Carolina's chief medical examiner for 24 years, explained that exhuming a body is typically done when there are unresolved questions that could be clarified by re-examining the remains. He shared that there have been instances where deaths initially ruled as accidents turned out to be homicides. For example, someone who falls to their death may later be found to have been pushed. The examination results would remain the same, but the context surrounding the incident would shift significantly. Despite this, Dr. Butts noted that there has been no new information regarding Elizabeth's death in the past 2 years. This suggests that authorities may not have found grounds to reopen the investigation or exhume the body at this time, but there could be further developments in the case in the future. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Petit family. The Petit family was viewed as a model family due to their stable economic background and well-behaved children, earning them genuine admiration from those around them. William Petit, the father, was a standout athlete in high school, particularly in basketball, where he demonstrated natural leadership skills. He was also the top student in his class, going on to earn a law degree from Dartmouth University. However, William's true passion lay in helping others, caring for the sick, and making a positive impact on the social. After completing his law degree, he decided to pursue a career in medicine at the University of Pittsburgh. It was during his 3rd year of residency at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh that William met Jennifer Hawk, a nurse specializing in oncology and co-director of the Health Center for a pre-graduate internship program. They fell deeply in love, with those who knew them confirming that they were perfectly suited for each other. The couple got married in 1985. 4 years later, they had their first daughter, Haley. Her birth inspired them to have a large family, which prompted them to purchase a house in Cheshire, Connecticut. On November 17, 1995, their second daughter, Michaela, was born. Following childbirth, Jennifer resumed her work as a nurse and internship co-director. However, she was later diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, a chronic disease with no cure that would follow her for the rest of her life. Her family remained supportive throughout. At 10 years old, Haley started raising money for the Multiple Sclerosis Society, generating significant funds over time. Michaela also performed well academically. And when Haley went to college, Michaela planned to take over the fundraising efforts so she could continue supporting their community. The summer before, Michaela had learned to cook and she enjoyed preparing meals for her family. Tragically, this daily activity leads the family to an encounter with a criminal. One July evening in 2007, Michaela was preparing dinner, but she needed additional ingredients. She and her mother went to the nearest market, where they coincidentally encountered Joshua Komisarjevsky, a man recently released from prison. Joshua had experienced a traumatic and complicated childhood. He was born to teenage parents. He was put up for adoption a week after birth and adopted by the Komisarjevsky family, renowned artists in Europe known for their strict and religious upbringing. Joshua had a high IQ, but struggled in school, prompting his parents to decide that homeschooling was a better option. During his trial, Joshua revealed that he had been sexually abused by a cousin in his childhood, but his family chose not to address the issue. This traumatic experience contributed to the development of his rebellious personality. At the age of 14, Joshua was accused of abusing his sister. Around the same time, he committed his first burglary. In 2002, he was arrested for 18 charges of burglary and resulting in a 9-year prison sentence. During the trial, he gave a chilling confession, revealing that he enjoyed invading other people's private space, enjoyed the feeling of being close to them while they slept, and found particular satisfaction in making others feel insecure. Released on parole in 2007 at the age of 27, officials deemed Joshua a danger to society, describing him as a perverted individual and disturbing behavior. Despite these warnings, the jury declared him fit for release. Following his release, Joshua stayed in a residence for ex-convicts, where he met his accomplice, Stephen Hayes. Hayes had spent a significant portion of his life in prison, starting with his first incarceration at the age of 16 in 1980. He was frequently arrested for violent robbery and burglary, and after being sentenced in 2004, he was granted parole in 2006, which led him to the same halfway house where he met Joshua. On July 22, 2007, Joshua trailed Michaela Petit and her mother as they traveled to a nearby market to purchase. He paid close attention to and noted specific details about Michaela's vehicle, facial features, and blonde hair. After completing their shopping, Michaela and her mother returned home, having no knowledge that Joshua had been following them. Later, Hayes sent Joshua a text message indicating he was impatient to start and needed a drink soon. Hayes asked if their plan was still on, to which Joshua confirmed to be yes. When Hayes asked how much longer he had to wait, Joshua told him he was busy putting his child to bed and advised Hayes to be patient. Hayes responded by expressing his eagerness to proceed. Meanwhile, Joshua secretly follows the Petit family in his car to find out the exact location of their house. The whole family was enjoying a nice dinner together, but they unaware that it would be the last time they would all be together. Later that night, while everyone was asleep except for William Petit, who had dozed off in the living room, their peace was disrupted by strange noises inside the house. William remembered feeling groggy, in pain, and unable to think clearly. Joshua and Hayes had entered the house through an unlocked door, initially planning to rob the family. However, upon finding a baseball bat, they used it to brutally beat William, who remained conscious despite the assault. One of the intruders threatened to shoot him if he moved. William was then restrained with ropes, tied to a pole in the basement. Joshua and Haley proceeded upstairs to Haley's room, where they found her sleeping. They tied Haley and Michaela to their bedposts, covering their heads with pillowcases. Meanwhile, in the master bedroom, Jennifer Petit had fallen asleep, but was soon woken up by Joshua and Hayes. They controlled Jennifer by tying her hands and feet, feeling that they now had control of the house. Joshua and Hayes then took their time to thoroughly inspect the house, and even stopped to smoke cigarettes in the living room. After collecting valuables such as jewelry, cash, Joshua and Hayes decided it was time to leave. It seemed the Petit family's ordeal was finally over as they heard the burglars leave the house. However, their nightmare was far from over. Joshua and Hayes sold the items at a pawn shop, but after realizing they hadn't made as much money as they expected, their greed drove them to return to the house. When they returned to the Petit house, they discovered a check register with $40,000 and decided to steal a total of $155,000. Once back, they informed Jennifer of their plan, threatening to kill her entire family if she didn't comply. Desperate and prioritizing her daughter's safety, Jennifer reluctantly agreed to accompany Hayes to the bank the next morning. Meanwhile, Joshua took advantage of Jennifer's absence to enter Michaela's room. He untied Michaela, undressed her, and took photos with his cell phone. He assaulted her, recording the act. Afterward, Joshua took her to the bathroom to clean her, aiming to eliminate any DNA evidence. He ordered her to put her pajamas back on and tied her up again. The evidence that Joshua raped Michaela was found during her autopsy. State Medical Examiner Dr. Wayne Carver discovered Joshua's DNA in Michaela's body. At the bank, everything initially seemed to go smoothly. However, Hayes failed to notice Jennifer's actions while she was in line. Before approaching the teller, Jennifer wrote a note on a flyer asking for help. The note read that her name was Jennifer Petit, she needed to withdraw $115,000 from her savings account, and that her family was in danger, so Jennifer asked them to call the police, or her family would be killed. The teller gave Jennifer the money despite her lack of identification. With the cash, Jennifer left the bank and returned to the car with Hayes. The bank employee immediately called the police to report the incident. However, the manager told the 911 dispatcher that Jennifer had indicated the home invaders were being nice and only wanted money. Cheshire police received a report from the bank and they set up a vehicle perimeter around the area without alerting the suspect. From a distance, the police observed the situation without intervening. Meanwhile, back at the house, Joshua told his accomplice about his actions towards Michaela, implying that he could easily harm Jennifer as well. Hayes then grabbed Jennifer, pinned her to the ground, and started removing her clothes. William heard his wife being assaulted upstairs and managed to flee. One of the intruders responded, "Don't worry, it's all going to be over in a couple of minutes." William crawled to the basement stairs and eventually made it to the backyard. William thought the intruders would shoot them all soon, so he knew he had to act fast. Joshua checked on William but found he had escaped. According to Hayes' confession, Joshua told Hayes that William had gotten away while Hayes was raping Jennifer in the living room. Upon hearing this, Hayes strangled Jennifer to death while continuing to assault her. Shortly after, they heard William shouting for help. A neighbor, who initially didn't recognize William due to his injuries, immediately called 911. Realizing the police would arrive soon, Joshua and Hayes tried to eliminate evidence. Hayes and Joshua doused Jennifer's lifeless body, various parts of the house including Michaela and Haley's bedroom, and also Michaela and Haley themselves with gasoline. Hayes and Joshua started a fire at the scene, unaware that the police had blocked off the area just a few miles away. Within 5 minutes, they collided with a police vehicle and were surrounded by officers. The two perpetrators, Joshua and Hayes, who were later identified as ex-convicts, were pulled from their vehicle and arrested. Meanwhile, the fire at the house was spreading rapidly. An ambulance arrived and took William Petit, was seriously injured, to the nearest hospital. Firefighters soon followed and attempted to put out the blaze. Once the fire was extinguished, they discovered a horrific scene inside the house. The first body they found was Jennifer's, which was badly charred and had rope around her ankles. On the second floor, they found Michaela tied to her bed. Her body completely consumed by the fire. In a desperate bid to escape, Haley had managed to break free restraints but collapsed just a few meters away due to smoke inhalation. William had also managed to free himself and crawled to a neighbor's yard for help, but the neighbor didn't initially recognize him due to the severity of his injuries. Both Joshua and Hayes admitted to the murders during questioning. Detectives noticed that Hayes smelled of gasoline throughout her interrogation. However, each attacker claimed the other was the main person responsible for planning the home invasion. Joshua also accused William of being responsible for the murders. In his diary, Joshua referred to William as a coward, stating that William had the opportunity to save his family but chose not to. The trial of Hayes started on September 13, 2010, with a jury of 12 people, consisting of 7 women and 5 men. The defense team argued that Joshua was the mastermind behind the crime and was responsible for making it more brutal. On the other hand, the prosecutors believed that both Hayes and Joshua were equally responsible. After about 5 hours of discussion, the jury found Hayes guilty on October 5. The sentencing phase began on October 18, but the jury was initially torn between recommending life imprisonment or the death penalty. Hayes' defense team argued that life imprisonment without parole would be a harsher punishment. However, on November 8, the jury decided to recommend the death sentence for Hayes. Before the trial, Hayes had tried to negotiate a plea bargain for a life sentence, but the prosecutors wanted the death penalty. On December 2, 2010, Hayes apologized for the pain he caused the Petit family. He stated that death would be a welcome relief and hoped it would bring some peace to those he hurt. Judge John Blue sentenced Hayes to 6 death sentences and 106 additional years for other crimes. However, when Connecticut abolished capital punishment in 2015, Hayes' death sentence was changed to life imprisonment. The trial of Joshua Komisarjevsky began on September 19, 2011. His lawyers offered a guilty plea in exchange for a life sentence, but prosecutors sought the death penalty. They argued that Hayes was the one who directed Joshua. Joshua was found guilty on October 13, 2011, and the jury recommended the death penalty on December 9, 2011. During Joshua's sentencing, he expressed remorse and shame for the crime, claiming he never intended to kill anyone. The judge set an execution date of July 20, 2012, holding Joshua accountable for his actions. However, in August 2015, his death sentence was commuted to life imprisonment after Connecticut abolished capital punishment. William Petit, the lone survivor of his family, was released from the hospital after 4 days. Upon his discharge, he immediately attended the funeral service for his wife and daughters. Overwhelmed with guilt and grief, William struggled to come to terms with the devastating reality that his loved ones were truly gone forever. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Michael Wayne Jones. Michael Wayne Jones was born on May 1, 1981, in Brattleboro, Vermont. His life was complicated and difficult from a young age. Michael witnessed his parents repeatedly physically and mentally abusing each other, and he himself was also subjected to this abuse. When Michael was young, his father went to prison for unclear reasons, leaving him feeling empty and deeply affected. His mother remarried and had another son, Dana, bringing some happiness to Michael's life. However, their home life remained troubled. Michael's stepfather had trouble maintaining stable employment, which put a financial strain on his mother, forcing her to work 2 jobs to support the family. The stepfather was aggressive toward Michael and Dana. He used physical punishment. This has created an atmosphere that makes people feel scared and controlled. Michael was harshly punished for small mistakes, such as being late to school, and was often locked in a shed and subjected to sexual abuse. Michael's difficult life did not harden him. Instead, he showed kindness and a strong instinct to protect others, particularly his younger brother Dana. He is often the one to admit mistakes and take punishment for Dana, which brings the 2 brothers closer. Dana admired Michael's courage and love. Michael's stepfather was extremely controlling and rarely allowed him to interact with other children. His mother was too afraid of her husband to stand up for Michael or herself. This created a home environment that was isolated, secretive, and oppressive. With no outside help, Michael and Dana suffered ongoing abuse. The neighbors suspected that something was wrong in the household. In a desperate attempt to escape, Michael ran away from home but didn't know where to go. He was eventually found by authorities and shared the sad story of his family life. Unfortunately, no one helped him with his situation. Michael had difficulty expressing his genuine emotions, instead concealing them beneath a facade of indifference. He struggled with depression in his teenage years, which significantly impacted his mental well-being. However, at school, he found some relief from his struggles. Despite being introverted and feeling lonely, having responsibilities helped distract him from his difficult home life. Fortunately, Michael met Dorothy, a local business owner. Dorothy introduced him to her daughter, and although the daughter's name is not known, but Michael formed a strong bond with her. As time passed, their friendship blossomed into romance, navigating its share of highs and lows. This relationship brought out Michael's gentle, thoughtful, and cautious nature, revealing a more nuanced side of his personality. Dorothy was happy to see Michael in a new light, but at the same time, she felt concerned. She observed that he became uneasy whenever it was time to go home. Despite her daughter's frequent visits with Michael, he made a concerted effort to keep her away from his residence. Concerned by these signs, Dorothy decided to have deeper conversations with Michael. Michael eventually opened up to Dorothy about his concerns for his mother and brother's well-being. This enabled Dorothy to recognize the emotional burden and suffering that Michael was experiencing. After finishing high school, Michael enlisted in the United States Navy, which marked the start of a new chapter in his life. The Navy instills in him a sense of direction and purpose within a highly organized environment. As Michael developed a strong affection for the Navy, he realized that he had made the right choice. His newfound sense of happiness is largely due to his close relationship with his teammates. Although he would occasionally drink, Michael was always responsible and showed up for work, proving to be a calm and composed individual. During this time, Michael was dating a colleague. However, he quickly realized that the relationship was unhealthy when she became violent towards him. This brought back painful memories of his childhood. As his depression worsened, he realized he needed to end the relationship. Following the breakup, Michael dedicated himself to furthering his career. He pursued specialized training in combat medical care, which ultimately led to his appointment as a medic in the Marine Corps. Afterward, Michael met Sarah, and they fell deeply in love, eventually getting married. After getting married, Michael resigned from the Marines so he could devote his time to supporting his wife. Sarah had a positive impact on Michael's life, encouraging him to make good choices. Together, they had 3 children, and Michael was determined to be a devoted father, providing them with the best possible upbringing. In their relationship, Sarah often took the lead in decision-making, but Michael was always supportive of her choices. In 2011, Sarah found a job in Orange County, Central Florida, and the family moved there. She worked at the Mount Dora Animal Hospital, which was managed by Bo Delaporte. After Michael had difficulty finding a job, Sarah convinced Delaporte to take him on. She also emphasized the experience Michael had gained from his previous job. Michael quickly settled into his new role and showed outstanding commitment. Michael emanated happiness and had a clear passion for his work. Michael's positive demeanor made him highly sought after by pet owners. His employers, particularly Delaporte, grew fond of him, and their relationship blossomed into a strong friendship built on trust. Delaporte even entrusted him with some management responsibilities at the animal hospital. In 2014, Delaporte hired KCI, a new veterinary technician. Born on December 23, 1986, in Ion, Indiana, KCI was the second of 3 daughters to Nikki and David. She had 2 siblings, named Sarah and Brandy. She brought immense joy and positivity to her family, and also spread that energy to those around her. As KCI grew older, her love and concern for those around her deepened, fueled by her spiritual beliefs and moral principles. This gives her the strength to face life's challenges. In high school, KCI met Richard, and they were initially attracted to each other. However, as they dated, Richard noticed KCI's jealous and possessive tendencies. Her insecurity sometimes led to hurtful words and actions. Nevertheless, Richard remained patient and calm, and they eventually married after completing their studies. Over time, KCI's mother moved to Florida. Sarah and Brandy soon followed. Due to KCI's close relationship with her family, she and Richard relocated to Florida in 2009. After settling in, KCI worked occasionally as a transporter and sometimes as a dog groomer. She also began learning the trade of a veterinary technician. During this time, Casey and Richard welcomed their first child, Cameron. KCI was devoted to Cameron's well-being and made it her top priority. A few years later, Casey and Richard had their second child, Preston. The children grew in a happy environment filled with laughter and loving care. As KCI advanced in her veterinary technician career, she found a job at an animal clinic. There, she met Michael, who was Delaporte's right-hand man. Michael and KCI got along well, but Delaporte and Sarah both suspect that there may be something more than mere friendship between them. Even though both of them have families, but Michael found himself attracted to KCI. This attraction affected his focus and performance at work. Michael tried his best to satisfy KCI's needs, and she reciprocated Michael's feelings, and as a result they began an affair. Sarah and Michael decided to get a divorce, as did KCI and her spouse, Richard. After the divorce, Sarah was granted custody of her 3 children and relocated to Jacksonville. In contrast, KCI and Richard chose to share custody of their children, Cameron and Preston, according to a certain rule. KCI took her parenting responsibilities seriously and made sure to transport the children as agreed. Delaporte's frustration increased as Michael's work performance at the clinic continued to deteriorate. To make matters worse, Michael inappropriately approached other employees, overstepping professional boundaries. A betrayal occurred when Michael asked for time off, claiming his mother had passed away, only to use the leave for a beach vacation. Delaporte discovered the truth and subsequently terminated Michael's employment. Seeking revenge, Michael burglarized the clinic, stealing money, computer equipment, and even a gun. Delaporte identified Michael as the perpetrator and contacted the authorities. With KCI's assistance, Michael escaped to New Mexico but was eventually caught by the police. After serving a short prison sentence, Michael was released. Despite Michael's past actions, KCI remained devoted to him. The couple moved in together, and Michael became a stepfather to Cameron and Preston. Eventually, in 2017, around Halloween, Michael and KCI got married and started a new life together in a 2-bedroom trailer. Although the space is small, the affordable rent makes them feel grateful to have found a place where they can be together. In the same year, they welcomed their first child, Mercalli, followed by Ayana the next year. As their family grew to 4 children, Michael took on a job as a construction laborer to support them financially, while KCI dedicated herself to being a homemaker. She took great joy in every stage of her children's development and sought ways to capture those special moments. This led her to create a YouTube channel where she shared milestones of their family life. At first glance, their life seemed perfect, with Michael appearing calm and KCI's laughter frequently punctuating their videos. However, their relationship was not as it seemed. Behind closed doors, the couple frequently argued, and their disagreements had become a persistent problem. KCI's distrust of Michael led her to regularly check his phone, and she became suspicious whenever Michael worked late hours. A heated argument broke out between them on the night of July 10, 2019, while their children slept. The argument started when KCI discovered a message on Michael's phone that made her believe he was being adultery. The confrontation quickly turned violent, with KCI grabbing a baseball bat and pushing Michael. Michael then took the bat from her and, in a state of blind fury, he repeatedly struck her until she died. Michael put KCI's body in a plastic bag and hid it in a closet. He tried to clean up the scene as much as he could. The next morning, he took steps to prevent the children from finding out what happened. He then put KCI's body in his car. To avoid raising suspicion, Michael continued to post on KCI's social media accounts in the following days. On July 26, Michael sent a text to Richard, pretending to be KCI, asking him to take care of Preston and Cameron. Michael also texted KCI's mother, asking her to care for Mercalli and Ayana. When Richard arrived to pick up Preston and Cameron, he found it strange that KCI was not there and expressed his concerns to Michael. However, Michael dismissed Richard's concerns, saying KCI had left town for a few days. KCI's mother had a similar reaction when she came to pick up Mercalli and Ayana. Later that day, Michael called Sarah and told her that he and KCI were separating, and he needed to take care of the children while she worked. He then picked up the children and took them to his home. During the drive, the children noticed a strong, unpleasant smell in the car, similar to rotting meat. Michael continued to visit his children at Sarah's residence for 2 weeks, driving back and forth between his home and Sarah. Meanwhile, the body of KCI remained hidden in his car. As the days went by without hearing from her daughter, KCI's mother grew increasingly worried. On August 10th, Richard returned Cameron and Preston to Michael. This time, KCI's absence was even more noticeable, and it increased Michael's concern. During their brief conversation, Michael apologized for causing Richard and KCI to divorce, and acknowledged the challenges Richard went through in his relationship with KCI. As the new school year approached, Michael realized that the absence of the children in KCI would likely raise suspicions among the elementary school staff. This realization led to a tragic turn of events. On a night that remains unspecified, Michael took Cameron out of bed and suffocated him, then placed his body in a suitcase. The next morning, he did the same to Preston, putting his body in a garbage bag. A few days later, the owner of the trailer park where Michael lived served him an eviction notice, giving him 2 weeks to vacate the premises. Amidst this dire situation, Michael went to pick up Mercalli in Iona. When KCI's mother saw Michael again without KCI, she became overwhelmed with anxiety and had a nervous breakdown. Her mind was consumed by a single question: where was her daughter? Michael was driving with his daughters, Mercalli and Iona, when he was suddenly overcome with guilt. He felt trapped and decided to turn himself in at the police station. However, when he reached the door, he changed his mind and turned back home. Upon returning, he filled the bathtub with water and tragically drowned his daughters. After their deaths, he placed their bodies in a plastic container. As Hurricane Orion approached Florida in early September, a state of emergency was declared, prompting many people to seek shelter. Michael took advantage of the chaos to transport 5 bodies, including his wife and children. He loaded them into his truck and headed north to stay with Sarah. During his stay, Sarah noticed that Michael never contacted KCI or inquired about the children, which made her uneasy. However, she chose not to ask questions due to her awareness of the marital issues. After the hurricane passed, Michael's neighbors reported a strong, unpleasant smell coming from the trailer to the property owner. The owner checked the trailer, first looking through the windows and then entering it. Although the furniture and personal belongings were still there, the smell was overwhelming, but nothing else seemed out of the ordinary. KCI's mother grew desperate as she tried to make sense of her daughter's disappearance. She suspected Michael might be in trouble with the law and hiding, which could explain why her daughter was also in hiding for her own safety. Rather than waiting, KCI's mother contacted the sheriff's office and requested a welfare check at Michael's house. When officers arrived for the welfare check, they found the house empty but appeared to have been recently cleaned. However, a strong smell of decomposition lingered, contradicting the presence of cleaning supplies near the entrance. Before the officers could investigate further, the property owner arrived and asked them to leave. Meanwhile, with the bodies still in his vehicle, Michael drove out of state into Georgia. He stopped near a wooded area and disposed of the bodies of Cameron, Preston, Mercalli, and Iona. As he continued driving and checked his GPS, Michael lost control of the vehicle and crashed. Although Michael escaped without injury, the vehicle was severely damaged. The police quickly arrived at the scene of the accident and were immediately hit with the strong, terrible odor coming from the wrecked truck. They find a suitcase in Michael's truck, and when they open it, they discovered KCI's gruesome body. Michael broke down and confessed to his heinous crimes on the roadside. He also revealed the location of the children, leading to his immediate arrest. KCI's family was devastated by the news, feeling as though their world had shattered. In shock and grief, they still do not understand why Michael could have so brutally murdered his wife and children. Sarah, in particular, felt an intense hatred towards Michael, a sentiment she had never experienced before. With a search warrant and new evidence in hand, investigators went back to KCI's house. Upon entering, they were met with a strong, unpleasant odor and a noticeable reddish stain on the carpet. The agents began collecting evidence from the scene, while the autopsies were being performed to gather more information about the tragic incident. Forensic results showed that Cameron sustained a fractured jaw with no other visible signs of trauma. But a towel was in his mouth. Preston was found with a noose around his neck. Mercalli and Ayana were found in a small plastic bag together, which also contained a baby bottle with Ayana's name on it and a pair of pink sandals. The cause of death for Mercalli and Ayana was determined to be drowning. KCI's autopsy results showed a severe blunt force injury to the front of her skull and face, but no other signs of trauma were found on her body. When questioned by authorities, Michael remained calm and provided precise and honest answers. Michael even thanked the police officers who arrested him and said he felt he had no other choice. Michael provided a clear and chronological account of incident from the fight with KCI to his subsequent arrest. When asked about his motives, Michael said that his actions stemmed from the harsh life circumstances he endured, which led him to believe that his decision was the only possible solution. The tragedy profoundly affected everyone involved, but it was particularly shattering for Sarah. She found it extremely difficult to accept that her children had been exposed to and had lived with someone like Michael. As a result, Sarah struggled with mental health issues after learning the truth. Michael was subsequently charged with second-degree murder for KCI's death and 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder for the deaths of the children. Michael pleaded guilty to the charges, bypassing a trial and moving directly to the sentencing phase. A 12-person jury then had to decide between 2 sentences, life imprisonment or the death penalty. The defense strategy focused on Michael's difficult childhood and mental health issues, highlighting various psychological disorders that may justify a reduced sentence. However, state prosecutors argued that the extreme brutality of the case worthy a death penalty. In January 2023, the jury unanimously recommended the death penalty, as required by state law. After a brief 99-minute hearing, the judge formally sentenced Michael to death. He also received a separate sentence of life imprisonment without parole for the murder of KCI. Michael's lawyer quickly filed an appeal following the sentencing. However, on April 28, 2023, the judge rejected the appeal and confirmed the original sentence. Prosecutors were pleased that justice had been achieved for KCI's family. Michael is still in prison, awaiting his scheduled execution. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Soni Millbrook. Soni Millbrook was born on February 15, 1981, in Memphis, Tennessee, USA. She is the daughter of Christine Millbrook Bennett and grew up in a large family with many siblings, having 2 sisters and 3 brothers. This warm and close-knit environment helped her build a special relationship with her cousin Jenny during her teenage years. Soni became a popular student at her high school. In 1998, when she was 17 years old and in the 11th grade, she met a man named Lakeith Moody, who was older than her. She soon began a relationship with him. However, the relationship was not a happy one, as Lakeith was abusive and violent, leaving visible injuries on Soni's body. Despite this, they had 4 children, 3 girls and a boy named after his father. In 1999, Soni's mother discovered a bruise on Soni's chest. When her mother asked her about it, Soni cried and confessed that Lakeith had caused the injury. A friend of Soni's also witnessed the injury, but Soni refused to report Lakeith's behavior to the police. Lakeith often controlled Soni and tried to isolate her from her friends and family. That same year, Soni moved into an apartment in the Fraser neighborhood of Memphis. One day, the management informed her of an incident at her apartment. When she arrived, she found a chaotic scene, damaged furniture, missing clothes, a destroyed television, food smeared on the walls, and personal hygiene products scattered everywhere, including under the stairs. Strangely, the mirror had the words, "Kiki loves you," with Kiki being Lakeith's nickname. Lakeith's behavior made Soni's relatives even more concerned. On October 31, 2000, Soni and her cousin, Pamela, went to a bar called The Mirage with Lakeith. While at the bar, Lakeith became aggressive towards Soni by slapping her and throwing a drink in her face. After the incident, Sony and Pamela left the bar and got into their car. According to Pamela, Sony was shaken and frightened by Lakeith's actions. Sony asked Pamela to take her home immediately because she was afraid that Lakeith would come after them. When Sony got home, she locked the door securely. An hour later, Lakeith came to the house, yelling and banging on the door. Pamela had to threaten to call the police to make Lakeith leave. Once Sony calmed down, her cousin decided to leave her alone. However, that evening, Pamela received a call informing her that Sony had been hospitalized. Lakeith had forced his way into the house, and when Sony tried to end the relationship, he attacked her. He tore off Sony's clothes and hit her on the head, face, chest, arms, and between her thighs. She suffered bruises all over her body, loose teeth, and even lost consciousness because Lakeith choked her until she passed out. Lakeith later accidentally discovered that Sony was on birth control pills, and he attacked her again. The next morning, Sony called Pamela and asked her cousin to take her to the hospital because of serious health problems. In late 2008, Sony, then 27, worked at a Christian institute. She was considered a reliable and punctual employee. Therefore, when she took time off or missed work, it was usually due to important reasons. Once, she called her supervisor to report that she could not come to work because her face was badly bruised, and she did not want the children to see it. After she asked for a day off, Director Leslie approved it. However, when Sony returned a few days later, the bruises were so obvious that the director allowed her to wear sunglasses while working at the academy. Lakeith's violence not only affected Sony and their children but also caused concern in the community. In April 2008, Lakeith was found sitting in an SUV with a gun in his hand, despite being previously prohibited from owning a gun due to a criminal record. Furthermore, he had previously served 2 years in prison for burglary and 3 years in prison for drug possession with intent to distribute. Sony tried to avoid her boyfriend, but it was almost impossible. The situation came to a head on October 6, 2008. At that time, Sony did not arrive at the academy by 5 p.m. Her sister received a text message from Sony saying that Lakeith was holding her hostage in his home and had been beating her all day. Sony also provided her home address. Sony's sister called the police. 2 officers went to Sony's house. They knocked on the door, but there was no answer since it was locked from the inside. They then called the security department to unlock the door. When the police entered the house, they saw Sony's boyfriend jumping out of the back window of the apartment. Sony stood in the hallway, crying and unable to speak because of her grief. Her 4 children were also present, making for a very heartbreaking scene. Sony's face and neck were covered in bruises and scratches. When she calmed down, Sony explained what had happened. Sony and Lakeith began arguing, and he refused to let her leave the house. She told the police that Lakeith would not let her or the children near the window. She also said that Lakeith injured one of their children by grabbing the child and preventing her from taking the child to the hospital. Sony said that her boyfriend had been both physically and verbally abusive. During one altercation, he tied a baby blanket around her neck and choked her until she lost consciousness. When the police arrived, Lakeith threatened to choke her again and said he would kill her if the police did not let him go. The police searched the area but did not find Lakeith. Sony then left the house with the children in her car. 3 days later, she filed a restraining order against Lakeith, fearing for her life and wanting to prevent any contact with him. However, she missed the hearing, and the protective order was never granted. Nearly 6 months later, on March 10, 2009, Sony was still in contact with Lakeith. That day, he was supposed to pick up the children for a doctor's appointment, but instead, he began arguing with Sony, accusing her of having a new boyfriend. The argument quickly turned violent as he slapped her and pulled her hair. She tried to break free and ran out of the apartment while Lakeith screamed and threatened to kill her. Lakeith did not catch Sony but instead kidnapped their youngest child, an infant, and drove away at high speed. A police patrol alerted to the domestic disturbance arrived as Lakeith was running away. The officers attempted to stop him, but he escaped. In early 2010, Sony, 28, was studying at Southeast Tennessee Community College. She had to stay home to care for her fifth child, who was 9 weeks old, because of poor health. In January, Sony and the children moved into the Budget Lodge in Memphis. However, on the first day Sony moved in, she and Lakeith's arguments became so loud that motel staff had to intervene because they were disturbing other guests. Sony and Lakeith could not maintain a peaceful relationship. They argued constantly, disturbing neighbors and management with the noise. On January 22, a hotel security guard witnessed Lakeith in a very agitated state. He arrived at a high rate of speed in Sony's car and then began yelling at her as she stood on the second-floor balcony with the children. In his anger, he threw a bag of groceries at her. The security guard arrived and told Lakeith not to make any noise or throw things in the hotel. Lakeith was instructed to settle the argument in his room. However, Lakeith told the security guard that he did not need to worry about it. Lakeith then locked his car and accompanied the security guard to an unoccupied room on the third floor. The security guard asked Lakeith to hand over any hotel keys he had. Surprisingly, Lakeith had keys to 3 different rooms, even though he was not registered as a guest. The next day, Lakeith and Sony moved into room 222 with their children. However, the night manager asked Lakeith to leave that evening. Although Lakeith left as requested, he soon returned. The arguments between Sony and Lakeith continued for several more days until the guard asked Lakeith to leave the hotel for good. As Lakeith left, the front desk clerk tried to calm him down. The guard also warned Lakeith not to come back that night. Lakeith got into her car and drove away. Some time later, Sony spoke to Pamela and confided that she was having problems in her life. She was staying at the motel and wanted to talk to Pamela about something important. Sony said that she would call if she left the motel or if her boyfriend left first. The next day started normally. At 7 a.m., Sony took the younger children to daycare and the older children to school. Around 11 a.m., the housekeeping manager knocked on Sony's door and spoke to her through the window to inform her that they needed to pay the rent or they would have to leave. The manager returned several times that day. On a visit around 2:30 p.m., Lakeith answered the door. The room was dark. Lakeith told the manager that his mother was on her way to pick up the money. On January 27th, Sony did not pick up her older daughter on time. So the school secretary called the child's grandmother, Christine, to ask her to come pick up the girl. When Christine tried to contact Sony, she received no response. At around 6 p.m., she discovered that her other grandchildren were still at daycare. Concerned that she could not reach Sony, Christine asked her husband to pick up the younger children from daycare while she went to the school to find out what was wrong. They contacted the police and reported the incident at approximately 10:30 p.m. Later, on January 28, the housekeeping manager re-entered room 222 and began taking inventory of the items that Sony and Lakeith had left behind. The room was filled with clothing in a large trash bag, which was then taken to a storage area. After the room was cleaned, it was ready for new guests. On January 29th, James and Rhonda Sargent moved into the room. They quickly noticed a foul odor and attempted to block it with incense, but were unable to eliminate it completely. They also discovered that previous tenants had attempted the same, as they found scented tissues in the tiles and ceiling vents. Because the smell was so strong that they reported it. On January 29th, officers from the Memphis Police Department's Missing Persons Unit visited the hotel to inquire about Soni's whereabouts, as that was where she was last seen. However, they did not enter room 222. Lakeith was arrested on February 2nd, around 7 p.m., while inside Soni's car at a shopping center. He was held for 48 hours on a charge of car theft. During questioning about Soni's disappearance, Lakeith said he last saw her on January 26th. He explained they had met in the hotel parking lot that morning after Soni had dropped off her children at school. They went into the room, had sex, and then returned outside. Lakeith then took Soni's car keys and left the hotel. He claimed Soni planned to use her welfare and student loan money to buy a new car, so he wasn't worried about keeping her car. Lakeith also said he had been living in the car since January 26th. However, investigators discovered that Lakeith had actually been staying at a different hotel. Additionally, given the snowy weather during that time, it was unlikely that he had spent the night in the car. On February 3rd, police found a debit card with Soni's name on it and several recent purchase receipts inside the car. That same day, police also searched the clothes stored at the hotel for DNA or other evidence, but found nothing. Due to the lack of evidence linking Lakeith to Soni's disappearance, he was released. Soni's cousin and her mother had to undertake the painful task of going to the hotel where Soni was staying to collect her belongings. At that time, Soni's cousin had a bad feeling but did not find any evidence. On February 4th, the police went to Soni's cousin's house and found a DVD player in Soni's wallet. Soni's cousin said they had received the items from Moody. According to the cousin, Lakeith borrowed the DVD player on January 24th under the pretext of watching a movie and drove a red car that day. When he saw Lakeith again a few days later, the cousin asked why Lakeith did not pick up the children on January 27th. But Lakeith evaded the question. When the cousin asked about Soni's whereabouts, Lakeith left the DVD player and wallet behind and left. Around that time, guests James and Rhonda Sargent requested to be moved out of room 222 because of the persistent odor. Since there were no other rooms available, they moved to another hotel. Later guests in room 222 also complained of a foul odor, despite the room being cleaned several times and the carpets being cleaned in early February. The odor persisted, only easing slightly over several days. On February 4th, homicide detectives arrived at the hotel to investigate. By this time, room 222 had been occupied and cleaned at least 3 times. As a result, the detectives were unable to enter the room to collect evidence. Instead, they asked hotel staff if they had noticed anything unusual. All staff responded that nothing was unusual. Then, on February 7th, James and Rhonda returned to the hotel and changed rooms 3 times. During one of the changes, they spent the night in room 222. While there, they informed management that the room still smelled unpleasant. To address this issue, in March, the hotel performed a more thorough cleaning of room 222. The staff cleaned the carpet, bedding, shower curtains, and window blinds. However, the results were shocking. The odor not only remained but became even more intense. The manager discussed the issue with the security guard. During the conversation, they recalled that the previous tenant, Soni, had disappeared at the end of January. The security guard recalled the events that occurred at that time and suggested that the manager check room 222 for traces of blood or cleaning agents. 10 minutes later, the manager returned and asked the guard to accompany him. What they found was horrifying. The 2 men entered the room where the manager had removed the mattress from one of the beds, leaving only the bed frame. The bottom of the bed frame had a cover. When they lifted the box spring, they discovered a large gap where anything could be hidden from view. Looking through the sturdy edges of the bed frame, they saw the unthinkable, a decomposing body. They called the police, who arrived at the scene shortly after. The bed frame was found to have many marks on it, and there were 2 pieces of broken wood near the headboard. A towel and a cloth bag were found between the legs of the body. The victim was wearing a shirt but nothing below the waist. The forensic team's autopsy determined that the cause of death was strangulation with a coaxial cable. The cable was wrapped around the neck, under one arm, around the chest, and ended behind the back. The medical examiner concluded that it would take at least 2 to 3 minutes of sustained pressure to cause death. In order to find the killer, the police collected items from between the victim's legs for analysis. The victim's shirt had an unidentified fingerprint. In addition, the scarf and the cloth bag did not belong to the victim. DNA samples that matched Soni's genetic profile, as well as that of a woman, were discovered. More remarkably, male DNA was also found on the cable, which led to the hypothesis that Soni had died at the time she was reported missing. The coaxial cable used in the case may have come from a DVD player that Lakeith borrowed from her cousin. Lakeith had been arrested by police for illegal possession of a weapon, and he was also the last person seen with Soni alive, making him a suspect in the case. He was in Soni's car when he was arrested and taken to the Mason detention facility. On March 18, authorities launched an investigation into why the case unfolded in such a strange way. The chief of police said the victim's family deserved an explanation and acknowledged that the circumstances of the case were unprecedented, making it a shocking case of domestic violence. He also regretted that the room where Soni died had been cleaned and rented out multiple times, making it difficult for police to collect evidence. However, this explanation was met with skepticism. One of the first tenants, Rhonda, said the police should have been allowed into the room when James and Rhonda visited in January and would have found Soni sooner if they had noticed the smell of a decomposing body. Rhonda believes the police were slow in finding Soni. Following the loss, Soni's family held a funeral for her on March 24. Soni's children were placed in the care of her sister on April 1. They are currently trying to gain legal custody of the children. Soni's sister said that although the children were the primary victims, everyone in the family's lives was turned upside down by the loss. She pledged to take care of Soni's children, making sure they had enough food, clothes, and toys, and to keep them together as a family. She also said Soni had benefited from a social program, and she would continue to care for the children as her sister had. The card had been loaded with money before Soni went missing because she received an income tax refund. Police tracked the card's activity and found that it was in Lakeith's possession. During the surveillance, they noticed that the card was used on February 1 at a convenience store Soni usually visited to withdraw cash using her electronic welfare transfer card. Notably, this occurred 4 days after Soni went missing. Officers went to the store and requested the owner to show them the footage from their 16 security cameras. Through the footage, they observed that on the morning of February 1, at 11:38 a.m., a man dressed in yellow conducted a transaction at the store. He used a Soni card to buy a bottle of orange juice, withdrew cash, and purchased a cigar. After making these purchases, he returned to a car driven by someone else. With all the evidence against him, Lakeith's trial began in the first week of February 2014, more than 4 years after the crime. By then, the Budget Lodge Hotel involved in the crime had closed. Lakeith did not admit his guilt. During the trial, the prosecutor portrayed the case as the tragic end of a tumultuous relationship. In contrast, Lakeith's defense attorney argued that there was insufficient evidence to establish his client's guilt. He pointed out that there were no witnesses or physical evidence to prove Lakeith's crime. The attorney also noted that the police found fingerprints on the victim's bed frame, but those fingerprints did not match Lakeith's. This suggests that someone else may have been involved in the crime. Additionally, the attorney argued that there was reason to suspect that the victim had had relationships with several other men over the years. He also emphasized that his client had never been convicted of domestic violence against the victim. Furthermore, he revealed something that the public did not know. Sony moved in with Lakeith again because she had to leave a relative's home due to a rat infestation. On February 6th, video footage showing Lakeith using a Sony prepaid card 4 days after her death was presented to the court. The defense claimed his calm demeanor throughout the transaction demonstrated his innocence, while the prosecution saw it as evidence of a cold and ruthless man with no regard for the crimes he was accused of committing. On February 7, 2014, he was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison. On February 10, he appealed the conviction, arguing that the court had erred in considering his past acts of domestic violence and that the evidence was insufficient. On July 7, 2015, the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals upheld the convictions, affirming the decision. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Sophia McKenna. Sophia McKenna was born on March 7, 1996, in North Stonington, Connecticut. Growing up, Sophia had a happy and carefree childhood. She was a bright and energetic young girl. Sophia developed a close relationship with her siblings. They were from her mother Michelle's first marriage. When Sophia was around 6 or 7 years old, her parents went through a divorce. This event left a lasting impact on Sophia's emotional well-being, causing her significant emotional pain in the years that followed. Sophia was diagnosed with bipolar disorder, a mental health condition marked by severe mood swings during her high school years. The condition affected her mood, behavior. Although Sophia received treatment, including medication and therapy, there is no cure for the condition, which posed significant challenges for both her and her family. Bipolar disorder had a profound impact on Sophia's daily life, leading to unpredictable behavior and a chaotic lifestyle. Her relationships were often unstable and those around her struggled to cope with her condition. However, in 2015, Sophia met Austin, a charismatic and optimistic person who quickly captured her heart. Sophia and Austin had a volatile relationship due to Austin's aggression and anabolic steroid use for sports. They argued frequently, sometimes leading to physical fights. Sophia's mental health struggles often contributed to these conflicts. Austin's aggression left Sophia injured several times, requiring hospitalization. When Sophia discovered Austin's affair about a month before the incident, she decided to end the relationship, but they still saw each other occasionally. Sophia persevered through her struggles and continued to progress in life. As a young woman with striking features, she worked briefly as a model for a local company's jeans advertisements, which helped fund her education. Sophia eventually graduated as a licensed massage therapist and landed a job at the Red Door, a high-end spa in a luxury hotel. It was there that she met her 20-year-old coworker, Spencer Mugford. A beach lover and keen swimmer from Florida, Spencer was hired as a sailing instructor. Spencer and Sophia developed a strong connection due to their shared interests. They started dating, but their relationship was short-lived as their families did not approve of it, mainly because they were often surrounded by trouble. Michelle, Sophia's mother, was particularly concerned about her daughter's well-being as Sophia was frequently meeting Austin, an ex-boyfriend, and drinking alcohol, which had become a regular habit. In the end, Sophia's relationship with Spencer did not work out, and they decided to remain friends. The exact reason for their breakup is unclear, but it seems Sophia may have reunited with Austin. Despite this, Sophia and Spencer continued to spend a lot of time together, both at work and outside of work. Spencer and Sophia had always been intrigued by the mysterious lighthouse and decided to visit it on the eve of Memorial Day. Their trip, however, ended in an unexplained event. On June 8, 2018, a commercial fishing vessel near the Long Island Strait made a disturbing discovery. The crew spotted something unusual in the water, and upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a corpse. The fishermen quickly alerted the Coast Guard, who then notified the police. When the police arrived, they recovered the body of a young man from the shoreline and observed unexplained bruises and abrasions on the body. The deceased was later identified as Spencer Mugford, who, along with his girlfriend, Sophia McKenna, had been reported missing just a few days earlier. To understand what led to Spencer's death, his body underwent an autopsy. The results confirmed that Spencer had drowned, and experts did not find any signs of violence or assault. However, some details from the autopsy were kept undisclosed. In the same week that Spencer and Sophia went missing, 2 other men went missing in the same area. Their bodies were later discovered. And like Spencer, they had drowned. Initially, police believed that these incidents were unfortunate accidents caused by adverse circumstances. Remarkably, despite an extensive search, Sophia McKenna's body has not been found. On the night of May 27, 2018, in the small town of Groton, Connecticut. Although the investigation is ongoing, the case remains unsolved, leaving many questions unanswered. The story revolves around Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford, who decide to hike to the New London Lighthouse, located along the Thames River in a location considered mystical by locals. Built in 1909, this historic lighthouse has become famous for claims of paranormal activity involving Ernie, the first lighthouse keeper. According to local legend, Ernie's grief led to his tragic death after he jumped from the roof of the lighthouse following a painful breakup. Since then, locals and visitors have reported many strange occurrences. Mysterious events have included doors and windows opening for no apparent, sheets falling off beds, and radios turning on for no reason. Sailors have also reported mysterious incidents, such as boats leaving the shore on their own. As a result, the lighthouse has become a place of paranormal stories. The following Saturday, Sophia's friend Austin tried to reach her, but his calls and messages went unanswered. Initially, Austin wasn't concerned, knowing Sophia often slept in late. As the hours passed with no response, he started to worry and contacted Sophia's mother, Michelle. Michelle hadn't checked her phone because her younger daughter had been playing with it since morning. When she finally checked, she found 7 missed calls from an unknown number. Michelle attempted to call the number back, only to reach Spencer's voicemail, suggesting that the calls might have been from Sophia. Michelle attempted to contact Sophia but was unsuccessful. She and Austin then began a search. Austin called nearby hospitals, while Michelle filed a report with the police about a missing person. They also reached out to Spencer's family, who were equally worried since he had missed a significant family event and was unresponsive to their calls and messages. Michelle and Austin visited Spencer's apartment but found no indication that he had recently been there. The night before, Spencer's father learned that his son had met Sophia, which made him and his wife worried about the problems Sophia was having. Spencer's mother said that her son had planned to go fishing with a friend. The last time she spoke to Spencer was at 10 p.m. when her son said goodnight to her. Realizing that something was wrong, the Spencer family also reported their son and girlfriend missing to the police around 6:30 p.m. Police began searching for Sophia and Spencer. During the search, Austin contacted the sheriff to share some information about Sophia and Spencer's whereabouts the night before. He also told the sheriff that he had seen a video that Sophia had posted on Snapchat the night before. In the video, recorded on Spencer's phone, Sophia and Spencer can be seen having fun on a boat, heading towards the lighthouse. The footage shows a young man rowing towards the lighthouse. Everything seems normal. The photo taken before the incident shows Sophia posing playfully in front of the lighthouse with a concrete barrier and a "no passing" sign in the background. However, the events that unfolded just minutes after the photo was taken remain a complete mystery. Photos and videos were posted confirming that Sophia and Spencer were indeed at the lighthouse. This information prompted the police to dispatch 20 different Coast Guard units to the area. An extensive search was conducted by the Coast Guard, firefighters, and police, including air, sea, and land searches. The police's first major discovery was Sophia's car parked on a university campus, with her cell phone found inside. That night, the Coast Guard found a T-shirt that Spencer had been wearing in the video. Police theorized that Spencer may have used the T-shirt to secure a boat to shore. The search for Spencer and Sophia continued overnight and into the next day. However, a storm soon rolled in, prompting state authorities to temporarily halt the search until new information or clues about the Sophia and Spencer. This decision came as a shock to their families and friends, who refused to give up hope. They took matters into their own hands, plastering the city with posters and flyers featuring the missing duo's pictures. They also appealed to the public for any information that might aid in the search. Despite numerous witnesses in the area at the time of their disappearance, none came forward with any information. The family's private search efforts continued for days, but yielded no answers. Sophia likely chose not to report the incident to the police because she and Spencer had recently had run-ins with the law. Just days before, Spencer had been arrested for drunk driving, and Sophia had been charged with aggressive behavior. As a result, Sophia may have decided that it would be safer to seek help from her mother rather than seek police intervention. It is also possible that Sophia was in a state of panic and was not thinking clearly at the time. Without more information about her situation, it is difficult to say for sure why she made this decision. Police tried to piece together events on May 26, 2018. Memorial Day was coming up. Sophia was not working that day, but Spencer agreed to cover a coworker's shift from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. After work, the pair planned to meet up and attend the city's Lantern Festival together. Their plan was to spend the remainder of the day together, including a visit to a local lighthouse known for paranormal activity, which they were eager to experience. However, what happened after Spencer's shift is unclear. There is no information on who they met or where they went, and it is unknown if they had been drinking. It is known that Sophia's car was parked on the University of Connecticut campus around 2 a.m. Sophia left her cell phone in the car, possibly due to forgetfulness. Sophia's phone was dead, so she decided to leave it behind. Spencer and Sophia took a small sailboat from campus. The boat had no motor and weighed only 14 pounds, with oars as the only means of propulsion, and headed towards the lighthouse, navigating through treacherous rocky shores without safety equipment. That was all the information police had that night. On Monday evening, a police search helicopter spotted a white and blue sailboat stuck in the rocks about 7 miles west of the lighthouse. The boat was covered in dust, indicating it had been there for some time. Although it has not been confirmed, police believe the sailboat may be the one Spencer and Sophia took from campus. Fingerprints found at the scene of the boat were never examined or disclosed to the public, making it impossible to determine if they matched the fingerprints of the missing young couple, Sophia McKenna and Spencer Mugford. A major obstacle in the investigation was the unavailability of certain key evidence. Spencer's phone was never recovered, and the police did not obtain his cell operator records, making it impossible to confirm if any calls were made to numbers other than Michelle's on the night of the disappearance. Both the lighthouse and the campus have security cameras, but unfortunately they were not working on the night of the disappearance, and therefore did not capture any video of the event. Additionally, a serious mistake was made by the police in not investigating the lighthouse immediately after the couple went missing. To keep the case in the public eye, Sophia McKenna's family created a Facebook page called Searching for Sophia McKenna in July 2018. The page allowed the family to share updates, brochures, and pleas for information with the public. In a strange turn of events, a suspicious message was sent to Michelle from Sophia's social media account, requesting money, just weeks after the disappearance. This raised concerns about potential hacking, as the police had possession of Sophia's phone at the time. The investigation into Sophia's disappearance and Spencer's death has been closed. Police have been unable to come to a clear conclusion about what happened. On July 10th, a memorial service was held in Sophia's honor, organized by her family and friends. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Joanne Nelson. Joanne Nelson was a cheerful and intelligent young woman who values the happiness of her loved ones over her own. Growing up in Hull, also known as Kingston upon Hull, on the east coast of Yorkshire, England, she lived with her parents. Her mother was a teaching assistant, and her father, Charlie, worked as an engineer for the city council. Joanne has a bubbly personality and excels both academically and socially. She is active in sports, enjoying netball, racquetball, and swimming. Although she is happy, she always dreamed of having her own family. Joanne originally pursued a career in medicine but found the role of a nurse difficult. She considered working abroad but eventually chose to work at a job center in Hull to be closer to family and friends. Joanne enjoys helping people find jobs and improve their skills, finding fulfillment in improving the lives of others. One day Joanne meets Paul. Before meeting Joanne, Paul had been in a number of serious relationships. In 1993, during his college years, he dated Carrie Thompson. Their relationship was short-lived, but Carrie reported Paul's violent behavior to the police. During arguments, he became violent, punching walls and assaulting Carrie. In 1999, Paul met Jenny Mary Clark. They married just 2 weeks after meeting, but their marriage quickly became a nightmare. On their wedding night, Paul attacked Jenny, and the abuse continued. He even choked her until she passed out. Despite these problems, Paul and Jenny decided to have children. Their daughter, Chloe, was born in 2000, and Paul and Jenny divorced shortly thereafter. When Chloe was 5, Jenny met Joanne and immediately recognized the challenges Joanne would face with Paul, as she seemed too naive to deal with such a difficult man. In 2002, Paul ended his relationship with Jenny and began dating Joanne Nelson. Their relationship began on the streets, where Paul worked as a bouncer in bars and clubs. At 27, he was experienced in relationships, while Joanne, 19, was just entering adulthood. Despite the age difference, they found support in each other, both seeking independence from their parents. Initially, they lived with Paul's mother before eventually buying their own home. However, their happiness gradually faded. Their arguments and conflicts increased. For Joanne, everything became too mundane and boring. Their differences began to strain the relationship. For example, she loved to be neat, while Paul was indifferent to it. On February 14, 2005, Joanne did not show up for work, which was unusual and worrying. On Valentine's Day 2005, Joanne Nelson mysteriously went missing. Paul was the one who reported the matter to the police. He claimed that he last saw Joanne when she was sleeping, then he left home and went to work. When he returned home, she had disappeared without a trace. Joanne, then 22, disappeared, leaving her family and friends extremely worried. The situation became even more confusing when she missed the funeral of her best friend's father and did not wish her younger sister Katie a happy 19th birthday. After the police declared Joanne missing, a large-scale search operation was launched, involving many law enforcement officers, the military, and volunteers. Since Joanne's disappearance, Joanne's father has been suspicious of Paul. Meanwhile, Katie finds it hard to believe that Paul is involved in this case because Paul has been actively involved in the search for Joanne. Paul has been working with volunteers and Joanne's family and friends. He also gave interviews to the press without the permission of Joanne's family. In a phone conversation with a reporter, Paul claimed that he had nothing to do with Joanne's disappearance. Paul asserted that his love for Joanne was real and that he could not harm her. However, a facial expression expert, Cliff, analyzed Paul's behavior during a television interview and found several suspicious signs. First, Paul did not close his eyes when talking about Joanne, which is not common for a grieving person. Second, Paul did not try to shed tears when talking about his lover. These unusual behaviors made people question whether Paul's words were truly sincere. Paul, the man who was involved in Joanne's disappearance, was eventually arrested after his mother disclosed information about his actions to the police. When questioned, Paul confessed that he had killed Joanne during an argument on Valentine's Day 2005. He said that the argument stemmed from Joanne constantly criticizing him for not doing his chores, especially when she asked him to help her wash her clothes, which angered him. When Joanne announced her plans to leave and forced him to sell the house, Paul became even angrier. In a fit of rage, Paul killed Joanne with his bare hands. He then remained calm and began to plan how to cover up the crime. He went to his mother's house, took a gardening tool, and chatted with the neighbors. He then went to the store to buy the necessary items for removing the evidence, including bin bags, rubber gloves, and disinfectant spray. The lead investigator discovered fingernail marks on the back of Paul's hand, which indicated that he had participated in the murder. This evidence confirmed Paul's confession and proved that he had committed the murder. Surveillance videos from a store near the scene of the crime showed Paul acting surprisingly calmly. Using the items he had purchased, he bound Joanne's hands and feet, stuffed her in a bag, and secured it with duct tape. He then carried her body to her car in broad daylight. After Paul hid Joanne's body in the car, he went to fill up with petrol in High Halden. He then drove about 75 miles to Bradbury Woodland, a remote forest near Winteringham in North Yorkshire. There, he carried Joanne's body for about 250 yards until he found a suitable place to bury her, among pine trees. He used branches to cover up the small hole where her body was buried. To cover up the crime, before going to work, Paul made a fake phone call to Joanne to deflect suspicion. The next day, he continued his daily life without showing any remorse for his heinous actions. Paul showed a frightening coldness by concealing his crime and continuing his normal life. After his confession, Paul said he did not remember exactly where he buried Joanne. However, he remembered that he buried Joanne in a metal gate and that there were some green bottles nearby. Detective Higgins said this information was very useful for the search. Because of Paul's suggestions, the police were able to start organizing the search by following a route through the woods. The search for Joanne lasted about 6 weeks and involved many people, including units from 3 counties working together on this grueling task. After 39 agonizing days of waiting, a team of detectives led by Ray Higgins finally found the remains of Joanne, 22, in Bransby near York. They followed Paul's description slowly. After walking about a quarter of a mile, they came upon a hole in the woods. Here they found a rubbish bag with what looked like a leg inside. It was Joanne's body wrapped in the bag. Paul, known for his history of sexual violence against women, kept his dark secrets hidden from Joanne's family and the public until the trial. At the time, he claimed to have mental health problems while working as a bouncer at the club. People who knew him from the gym said he often caused trouble at clubs and bars. The family later discovered that Paul had been taking steroids in an attempt to become a bodybuilder. Friends said he had previously been an alcoholic and that his rages may have been steroid-induced. Paul attended Sydney Smith School, then Hull College, where he completed a degree in civil engineering. He went on to study at Bishop Burton College, where he completed a degree in horticulture. Paul lived in Saudi Arabia, working with his father, Peter Dyson, in the maintenance industry. He also gained experience as a gardener and later worked as a mechanic for Pinal. From December 2004, Paul worked at Byam Timber on Somerton Road as a timber cutter until his arrest. At 15, he met Colin Allen, a martial arts expert, and they became friends. Paul confessed to the murder to Colin, leading to his arrest. Friends said he had a distorted view of himself, seeing himself as charming and attractive to women. He often used his job as a security guard to approach girls from higher social classes. On the first day of the trial, November 7, 2005, Paul surprised the entire courtroom by pleading guilty. Joanne's family was completely shocked by the confession, as they had anticipated a long, intense trial. When Paul pleaded guilty, Joanne's family said yes in unison. Afterwards, he simply looked straight ahead or kept his head down, avoiding looking at Joanne's relatives and the police. He showed no emotion on his face, even as the charges were announced. His lawyer, Harry Barl, told the court that there was no excuse for his actions. On November 8, nearly 10 months after the murder, Paul was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 16 years to serve. Surprisingly, in November 2019, after just 14 years, Paul, then 45, was transferred to an open prison and released on day release. The reason was that the parole board found that Paul had actively participated in a self-awareness development program and successfully completed a social improvement program. The easing of Paul's detention conditions and his day release caused deep emotional distress for Joanne's family. Katie, Joanne's sister, expressed to the media that they felt lost and unsure of how to handle the news. Paul's release brought back painful memories of Joanne's death, and the family believed he did not deserve a reduced sentence for his actions. Katie emphasized that Paul's crime was serious and premeditated, making his early release a challenging ordeal for the family. They fear he might return to their city of Hull and commit further harm, as they have been unable to secure a restriction order against him. Although there is no confirmed information about Paul's return to the city, he remains under probation supervision. Any violation of his terms or the law will result in his return to prison. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne Morphew was born on April 11, 1971, to Jean and Adrian Alexandria. She grew up with two brothers, David and Andrew. Those close to her knew she was a special friend, known for her intelligence and thoughtfulness. In 1998, while still in high school, Suzanne met Barry Morphew. After 6 years of dating, they got married. Barry initially pursued a baseball career, signing with the Toronto Blue Jays, while Suzanne pursued a degree in education at Purdue University. However, after a severe injury cut his sports career short, Barry transitioned into horticulture. Suzanne had 4 years of teaching experience when Barry started his own business, and the company gradually grew over time. The couple had 2 children, Mallory and Macy. They led an idyllic life in Indiana but faced a setback when Suzanne was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Despite this challenge, Suzanne successfully battled cancer twice. The family eventually moved to Mayville, Colorado, in 2018 in search of a fresh start and to be near their daughter Mallory, who was attending Western State University. The Suzanne moved to a beautiful 7-acre property that allowed Barry to pursue his love of hunting. He continued working as a contractor and also became a volunteer fireman. Suzanne, on the other hand, retired from her teaching career and devoted more time to her church and a new hobby, sports mountain biking. To outsiders, the Suzannes seemed like the perfect family. However, but they had their share of problems. These issues were finally revealed on May 10, 2020. Monday, May 10, 2020, was unlike any other Mother's Day celebration at Suzanne's house. While Suzanne was home alone, her husband Barry and their daughters were out. Barry claimed he had a landscaping appointment in Broomfield, about a 3-hour drive from home, and their children went on a camping trip. They all planned to return home in the evening to celebrate Suzanne's special day. However, when Mallory and Macy messaged their mother to wish her happy Mother's Day, they didn't receive a response. This was unusual because Suzanne was very active on social media. The girls expected her to be checking her phone for updates, especially since a friend's daughter's wedding was taking place and Suzanne would likely want to see photos. After waiting a few hours without hearing back, the girls grew concerned. They asked their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife for help. Around 4 o'clock or 4:30 p.m. that day, Mrs. Ritter visited the Suzanne house and found it empty. She called Barry to explain the situation and he instructed her to look for Suzanne's mountain bike. If the bike was missing, he told her to contact the police. That's exactly what she did, and soon the police arrived at the Suzanne residence. Barry and their daughters returned home, they anxious to know news of Suzanne's whereabouts. A few hours into the search, the police found a crucial clue. Deputies discovered Suzanne's mountain bike in a steep ravine near the home. The location hinted that Suzanne might have been involved in an accident, but the bike and the surrounding area showed no signs of a struggle. Notably, there were no skid marks from the brakes, no damage to the bike despite its fall down the ravine, no bloodstains, and the nearby lawn appeared untouched. This evidence led the deputies to conclude that the bike had been deliberately placed in the ravine. When they shared this information with Barry, his reaction was unusual. As the investigation into his wife's disappearance proceeded, Barry shared many more implausible stories. As the investigation progressed, his behavior made it obvious that he didn't truly care for his wife. This led to unanswered questions and speculation about Suzanne's disappearance, leading many to suspect Barry's involvement. Barry gave details about his mountain lion story in a secretly recorded conversation with YouTuber Tyson Draper. Notably, Barry was absent from the search parties for Suzanne, organized by her brother Andrew. Andrew doubts Barry's story and offers another possibility: Suzanne actually went missing on May 9th, not on Mother's Day as Barry claimed. It was also discovered that Suzanne's helmet was found 1 mile from their home, in the same direction Barry's truck had traveled that morning. Investigators initially considered this an odd coincidence, but it became more significant when they discovered it was in the opposite direction of the construction site he was set to visit that day. In his initial interview, Barry said he woke up at 4:30 a.m. to an alarm clock and immediately left for Broomfield. However, telematic data from his Ford truck showed he drove 1 mile west before heading to the construction site. When confronted with this data, Barry explained that he was scouting elk earlier that morning. He then anesthetized them and sold their antlers, which was his habit. However, the officers pointed out a flaw in Barry's story: he couldn't have spotted the elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was just waking up. To address this, Barry changed his story, saying he didn't set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. and got up on his own. When asked about the day of Suzanne's disappearance, Barry described it as one of the best days they had had after a long time. He said that morning, he worked briefly with a coworker in Salida and then returned home early. After that, he went on a hike with Suzanne, followed by a grilled steak dinner and intimacy. Barry stated they went to bed together. However, it is essential to note that Barry is not a reliable source of information. During the police investigation into Barry, it was discovered that he had lied about the whole thing that happened that night. The first signs of deception were uncovered by investigators on May 9, 2020, when they reviewed the telematic data from Barry's vehicle and his phone records. Although Barry had indeed spent the afternoon and evening with Suzanne, the details did not match his initial story. One of the discrepancies occurred between 10:42 and 10:47. According to his phone data, Barry's movements around the property were unusual. When questioned by investigators about this inconsistency, Barry claimed he was probably hunting chipmunks with tranquilizers at the time. It was also revealed that Barry had switched his phone to airplane mode at 2:47 p.m. and left it in that mode until 10:17 p.m., which further raised suspicions. Additionally, investigators found evidence that contradicted Barry's claim of having a steak dinner with his wife. They discovered only one dirty dish, suggesting that Barry had eaten alone. As the investigation continued, more unusual occurrences were discovered on their plot of land. The police found additional suspicious details while reviewing the data from later that night. 1 hour after Barry claimed to have gone to sleep with his wife at 8:30 p.m., his car was seen backing up 96 feet from the driveway at 9:30 p.m. This led investigators to speculate that this could be when Barry loaded his wife's body into the truck. If he was indeed guilty. Furthermore, the records showed that between 3:25 and 3:48, the truck door opened and closed over 80 times, which, although indirect, suggested that Barry might be hiding something from the police, causing them must dig deeper into the incident that occurred on May 10th. Investigations involving Barry co-workers revealed that he had no reason to be in Broomfield on the day in question. The contract didn't start until a week later, so there was no project to inspect. Barry initially claimed that his only activities that day involved visiting the Holiday Inn, the work site for an upcoming project, a store for granola and water, and a stop at McDonald's to clean his windshield. However, surveillance footage obtained by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation contradicted his story. The footage showed that Barry disposed of 5 trash bags near the Holiday Inn and McDonald's. This increases suspicion about his actions. When police questioned Barry about the footage of him disposing of trash bags he gave an unusual explanation. He claimed that he wanted to avoid paying for disposal fees so he could clean his car. However, his story fell apart when officers searched his vehicle. Barry's suspicious behavior was further highlighted by a coworker who reported a strong smell of bleach and chlorine in his hotel room a day after Suzanne disappeared. In addition, investigators found that Barry had changed his clothes multiple times throughout that day. Investigators then delved deeper into Barry and Suzanne's personal lives. Their daughter revealed that her parents' marriage was not as happy as Barry had initially suggested. Text messages on Suzanne's phone confirmed this. Suzanne was deeply unhappy in the marriage and discussed her desire for a divorce, which Barry refused. Suzanne kept a list of grievances in her notes app, detailing a pattern of physical abuse by her husband Barry. She expressed fear of being alone with him and was concerned about his heavy drinking and attempts to take her phone. Suzanne also suspected him of being unfaithful. In an attempt to catch him in the act, she purchased a pen with a hidden recording device, but it ironically captured evidence of her own affair instead. The investigation revealed that Suzanne had been having an affair with a man named Jeff, a high school acquaintance, for about a year and a half, starting in 2018. Although Jeff initially appeared to be a potential suspect, he was later cleared of any involvement in Suzanne's disappearance. However, investigators discovered a note that suggested Barry had found out about the affair and might have accused her of having a boyfriend just 2 days before she went missing. During their search of the Suzanne house, police uncovered several crucial pieces of evidence, including the cap of a tranquilizer dart in the dryer and the spent bullet casing in the bedroom. They also found a large crack in the doorframe and a charred remnant of Suzanne's journal in the fireplace. These findings, combined with telematic data, suggested that Barry might have killed Suzanne on May 9, 2020. Phone records from Suzanne's phone supported her initial story. After texting Jeff 53 times and sending a selfie at approximately 2:10 p.m., the phone showed no further activity. It wasn't until 2 weeks later that the public discovered Barry was a suspect in his wife's disappearance. This revelation came when police excavated a construction site in Salida, one of Barry's job sites, over the course of 2 days. In response, Barry released a video to the public maintaining his innocence. It was not until May 5, 2021, nearly a year into the investigation, that Barry was arrested. While the evidence against him was largely circumstantial, the prosecution felt confident in their case. Due to the inconsistencies in Barry's alibis, his repeated lies, and a clear motive. Barry was charged with multiple crimes, including the first-degree murder of his wife, tampering with physical evidence, possessing a dangerous weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. Barry accepted the charges and paid a $600 fine. A preliminary hearing took place in August 2021 to decide if the case should go to trial, at which point most of the case details were made public. The prosecution presented its evidence over 4 days, outlining its theory of the incident. They claimed that on May 9, 2020, Barry killed his wife, dismembered her body in a hotel room, disposed of the tools, and buried her remains in an unmarked grave. However, Barry's defense strongly challenged the prosecution's narrative, pointing out inconsistencies in their story. They cited that cadaver dogs found no signs of human remains in Barry's car or the hotel room where he supposedly brought the body. The defense also raised doubts about the dart bullet cover, suggesting it may have been planted. Furthermore, the defense argued that Barry's dart gun was broken at the time, making it impossible for him to use it in the murder. The defense team's apparently piece of evidence was partial DNA found in Suzanne's Range Rover and on her bike helmet, which didn't match Barry. What made this discovery significant was that the DNA in her car matched DNA profiles from 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Chicago and Arizona. This raised doubt about Barry's guilt. However, the CBI investigator in charge of the case was unable to present this crucial evidence earlier because he had to take a leave of absence for military service before. It wasn't until September 7th that the judge decided to move forward with the case, setting Barry's bail at $500,000. He was released from county jail on September 20th, 2021. However, in a surprising move, the prosecution filed a motion to dismiss all charges against Barry without prejudice. At the time, the prosecution faced several challenges, including a lack of concrete evidence, as no body had been found. Additionally, the prosecution had missed multiple deadlines, resulting in the exclusion of 14 key witnesses from the trial. Barry was seen leaving the courthouse with his 2 daughters, visibly relieved. Nearly 2 years later, on September 22, 2023, investigators made a breakthrough in the case when they discovered several shallow graves in Moffat, Colorado. Suzanne's remains were identified through dental records and a chemotherapy port, found over 50 miles away from the initial search area. The discovery of Suzanne's body has raised fresh questions about Barry's potential involvement in her murder. Although the charges against him were previously dismissed, the new evidence has led many to wonder if he could still be considered a suspect in the case. Some people question how Barry could have disposed of the body without being in Moffat on May 9th and 10th, suggesting he might have had help. For now, Barry does not appear to be directly involved in where his wife's body was found. The police and district attorney's office continue to investigate the case. The 12th Judicial District's district attorney stated that they cannot comment on the case until more information becomes available, while offering condolences to Suzanne's family. Barry's attorney, Iris E.T. Yen, speculates that Suzanne might have been the victim of a serial killer. After finding her remains in a cemetery, Iris thinks that law enforcement wrongly accused Barry and hopes that they will admit their mistake. Barry has initiated a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff stations, and investigators because he was wrongly accused in the disappearance and death of his wife. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Katrina Ashley Edlund Smith. Born on July 16, 1982, Katrina is the youngest of Vicky's 3 children. She has 2 siblings, an older brother named Chad and a younger sister named Miranda. Katrina's parents separated when she was young, and she lived with her mother in Mason, Illinois, a suburb outside the city. Katrina is a kind, cheerful person who brings joy to those around her. She especially loves the holiday season and enjoys giving humorous gifts to friends and family. Katrina is a devoted church member, always willing to help those in need. Katrina was content with her life, and in her 20s, she met Todd Smith at a bar. Todd was not only charming but also successful. As a financial planner, he was able to run his own business from home. They found that they had a lot in common and their relationship blossomed. One thing that helped their relationship grow was Todd's flexible work schedule, which allowed them to travel extensively together. After 3 years of dating, Todd proposed to Katrina, and she happily accepted. The couple began planning their wedding, deciding to have an intimate ceremony at a local park. Katrina was thrilled at the prospect of their future together, especially since she had fallen in love with Todd's 3 daughters and was excited to be a part of their lives. Katrina's family, including her mother Vicky and siblings Chad and Miranda, found him to be trustworthy and personable. They believed that he would take good care of Katrina. After their marriage, Katrina and Todd began living together in Masny. On October 20th, 2012, Katrina called her mother to say that she was house-sitting for a friend. During the conversation, Katrina mentioned that she would be coming to dinner on October 24th and that she had something to share with Vicky, leaving her mother wondering what it could be. Before the conversation ended, Vicky promised to make Katrina's favorite meal: chicken and dumplings, a promise she never kept. On October 23rd, Todd Smith called 911, reporting that his wife Katrina had disappeared. He had been trying to reach her for hours without success. He told police that she was house-sitting for a friend and that the house was empty when he arrived. When Katrina's sister and brother, Miranda and Chad, learned of her disappearance, they were worried. Chad, who was training with the U.S. Army in Oklahoma, immediately flew to Illinois to help find his sister. That night, a resident called police about an abandoned car near Rock River. After investigating, the police determined that the car belonged to Katrina. They could not find any signs of a fight or anything else that would indicate that she was missing. Vicky's worst fears were confirmed when she learned that Katrina's daughter's car had been found abandoned in a ditch on the side of the road in an unfamiliar area. The situation seemed ominous, and Vicky could not shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to Katrina. If Katrina's car was in that area, then someone must have taken her and left the car there. After the discovery of the car, Katrina's case was officially declared a missing persons case and search efforts were intensified. At 11 p.m. on October 12th, Todd was taken to the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department for questioning. During the interview, Todd told police that he last saw his wife, Katrina, on October 22nd. According to Todd, Katrina had come to their home for a short time to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the following day. While doing laundry, she went to the mall to buy groceries and returned home at 8:30 p.m. After returning home, she left again, as she was house-sitting for a friend, as she told Todd. After Katrina was reported missing, her husband Todd made a heartfelt public appeal, pleading for her safe return. Todd broke down in tears, begging anyone with information about Katrina's disappearance to come forward. Speaking to the media, he urged the public to share any information they had about her whereabouts. As the search for Katrina continued, police and volunteers formed search teams to comb the area. They focused their efforts near the park where Katrina's abandoned car was found, hoping to uncover evidence or clues. Upon arriving in Illinois after military training in Oklahoma, Katrina's brother Chad met a group of people at the park who were eager to help find Katrina. To facilitate the search effort, Chad used his military training to lead the volunteers. He carefully mapped the area, divided the volunteers into teams, and coordinated a thorough investigation. As part of this effort, police used trained dogs to join the search. Katrina's mother, Vicky, created missing person flyers and distributed them throughout town, placing them at gas stations, convenience stores, and lamp posts to notify as many people as possible of her daughter's disappearance. Despite her efforts, Vicky's emotional state due to grief and fear made it difficult for her to participate in the search. Chad, who had supported Todd throughout this time, encouraged him to focus on finding Katrina, reminding him that they needed to stay strong. Later, a police officer discovered several items near Katrina's abandoned car. These items included a wallet, a cell phone, and a towel that appeared to have been used to wipe up blood. It was clear that someone had thrown these items away when they left the car. At that point, the police suspected that something terrible had happened. The items discovered have been sent to the crime lab for further analysis, and police are anxiously awaiting the test results to shed further light on the investigation. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, police investigated her personal life for clues. They wanted to understand every aspect of her life by looking into her relationships, daily routine, and any potential involvement in activities such as gambling or drug use. To gather information, police interviewed Katrina's friends and family members. They all described Katrina as a kind and responsible person. Katrina's family and friends described her as a dedicated and hardworking person. They claimed that she never showed any signs of addiction or irresponsible behavior. Instead, they described her as a devoted wife and a woman of integrity. During the investigation into Katrina's disappearance, a local woman came forward with a useful piece of information. She claimed to have seen a blue car matching Katrina's parked on a bridge over the Rock River on the night she disappeared. The trunk was open, and someone was kneeling behind it, but the woman could not tell the person's gender or race, preventing her from providing further details. Police had to investigate possible motives and consider whether anyone, including those close to Katrina, wanted to harm her. Despite claims of a happy marriage, Todd became a target of interest, as police know that even seemingly happy relationships can harbor hidden conflicts or secrets. 3 days after searching for Katrina, police examined her cell phone at the crime lab and found vital information. The phone provided a wealth of data, including text messages, incoming and outgoing calls, photos, videos, and her GPS location. This information allowed police to reconstruct a clear picture of Katrina's activities. Notably, they discovered that she was having an affair with a coworker named Guy Gabriel. The relationship began when they met after work one evening. Initially getting along well, it eventually developed into a romantic relationship. A police background check on Guy revealed a troubled past. It revealed a history of domestic violence, and the police suspected him of being involved in Katrina's disappearance. Furthermore, the police discovered text messages sent by Guy to Katrina, pressuring her to leave her husband Todd for him. Guy then became the prime suspect in the case. The police suspected that Guy may have reacted violently after Katrina refused to leave her husband for him. The revelation of Katrina's affair shocked her family and friends, as they believed her marriage to Todd was perfect and happy. No one suspected that Katrina had been having an affair behind Todd's back. When Todd discovered the affair through the police investigation, he was devastated. The news of his wife's affair hit him hard, taking him completely by surprise. Guy was interviewed by police about Katrina's disappearance. During the interview, Guy appeared nervous and admitted to his affair with Katrina, but denied any involvement in her disappearance. He claimed to have been at work the night Katrina went missing. Further investigation uncovered a previous incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina went missing. It was reported that during lunchtime at the auto shop where Katrina and Guy worked, a black Volkswagen Jetta drove through the parking lot with the sunroof open. The driver, who was wearing a mask, handed out flyers through the sunroof. When employees read the flyers, they found a derogatory statement about Katrina and Guy's relationship. The car quickly sped away, leaving people wondering who the mysterious driver was. Police interviewed Katrina's hairdresser, who shared that Katrina felt threatened and wanted to buy a gun for self-defense. Katrina told her hairdresser that she suspected someone was following her. Police searched Katrina's car at the police garage for evidence. Using a chemical called luminol, which glows when it comes into contact with blood, they found a significant amount of blood in the trunk. On November 9th, 17 days after a firefighter in Rock River discovered a body, and the fire department was called to assist in recovering the body and pulling it from the water. After it was pulled from the water, it was determined that the body was that of a woman. However, because the body was so badly decomposed, identification was difficult. It was unclear whether the body was Katrina's. The body was then taken to the medical examiner's office, where an autopsy was performed to determine the cause of death. To confirm the identity, dental records were sent to a county specialist for analysis. The expert then compared the dental features of the body with those in Katrina's records, confirming that the body was Katrina. Katrina's autopsy revealed that her cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. When her family learned that her body had been discovered, they were devastated. The heartbreaking news left them reeling, and it was difficult to accept the full extent of what had happened. Katrina's mother, Vicky, found the news difficult to accept, and the thought of her daughter suffering such a violent end was almost unbearable. Although Guy Gabriel is no longer a suspect, police have sought his perspective on who may have harmed Katrina. Guy reveals that Katrina had mentioned divorce. He believes that Todd's controlling nature may have escalated and led to the tragedy. As police dig deeper into Katrina and Todd's marriage, some disturbing facts come to light. Katrina had told several people that she wanted a divorce from Todd. In addition, police discovered that Katrina had met with a divorce attorney just one day before her disappearance. Contrary to what Katrina claimed, she was not house-sitting at a friend's apartment, but had actually moved out after her split from Todd. Based on the information gathered and interviews conducted, police began to suspect that Todd was behind the mysterious incident at Katrina's workplace. Suspicions were heightened when police discovered that Todd had recently driven a car matching the make and color of the one involved in Katrina's murder, a black VW Jetta. Todd was believed to have been test driving the car at the time of the murder. When police told Katrina's family that Todd was the prime suspect in her case, and that he had been arrested, they were shocked and in disbelief. The family had loved and respected Todd as a member of the family, and the news was devastating. Katrina's mother, Vicky, was devastated by the news. The thought that her son-in-law could commit such a heinous crime made her sick. She had always trusted Todd and could not imagine that he would commit such a terrible act. The possibility that Todd was responsible for her daughter's murder never crossed her mind. The police discovered that Todd's investment company was in legal trouble and he was no longer working. As a result, Katrina was the family's sole source of income. Based on this information, the police suspected that if Katrina left Todd, she would take the money with her. This possibility may have motivated Todd to consider killing his wife as a way to gain control of the family's finances. Police obtained a search warrant for Todd and Katrina's home to collect evidence. During the search, they found a baseball bat in the garage that had blood on it, leading police to suspect that it could be the murder weapon. The injuries on Katrina's body supported this theory, as they were consistent with blunt force trauma. To confirm their suspicions, a DNA test was conducted on the bat. The results showed that the blood on the bat belonged to Katrina. Furthermore, police discovered a large, unusually clean area under the car. Upon examination, they discovered that the blood left under the car matched Katrina's DNA profile. 30 days after Katrina's murder, her husband Todd was arrested and charged in connection with her death. Todd's trial began on January 11, 2017. During the trial, the prosecution presented its case against Todd, replaying the events of the night Katrina died. Key evidence included a recent meeting between Katrina and a divorce attorney to discuss her marital problems. The prosecution argued that Katrina's decision to divorce indicated that their relationship was in trouble. According to the prosecution, Katrina had visited Todd's home that day to do laundry in preparation for a job interview the next morning. During the visit, the prosecution claimed that Katrina had made it clear to Todd that she wanted to end their marriage. They argued that this caused Todd to become aggressive and attack Katrina. The prosecution alleged that while Katrina was in the garage, Todd became angry and picked up a baseball bat, beating her to death. After Katrina died, Todd allegedly moved her body into the trunk of her car. Todd then drove Katrina's body to a remote area called Rock River, where he disposed of the body by throwing it off a nearby bridge. After dumping her body, Todd parked his car on the side of the road and walked home. Once home, he cleaned up any evidence of his crime by disposing of Katrina's cell phone and the bloody towels he used to mop the garage floor. Todd Smith was found guilty by a jury and sentenced to 55 years in prison. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Becky Bleefnick. Becky and Tim met while studying at Quincy University. Becky majored in biology and loved tennis. Tim was an excellent football player, popular in school. Those close to Tim commented that he was a cheerful, innocent, and friendly guy. Tim always greeted everyone with a warm hug. With an enthusiastic and friendly personality, Tim was very loved by his friends. On the other hand, Becky's friends described her as a cheerful person, capable of making the surrounding atmosphere bright and positive just by her presence. With her positive energy and bright smile, Becky easily made a good impression on everyone around her. Both Becky and Tim were attractive people, and they seemed to complement each other perfectly. The combination of attractive appearance and compatible personalities made them an ideal couple in the eyes of everyone. 2 years after graduating from Quincy University, Becky and Tim decided to get married and start a new phase in their lives. Being a practical couple, they prioritized saving money over spending. Instead of buying an engagement ring and planning a lavish honeymoon, they decided to use their savings to put a down payment on their first home. Becky had dreamed of becoming a doctor, but ultimately did not pursue this career. Although she loved medicine, Becky felt a stronger calling to motherhood. She longed to experience the joy and happiness of motherhood. This dream came true when she and her husband Tim had 3 sons. Becky loved spending quality time with her children and watching them grow up. As her children grew older, Becky decided to pursue her own dreams. She chose to go back to school to get her nursing degree. On the other hand, Tim has always been a performer, from his time in community theater in Quincy to creating comedic videos on social media. He has the ability to captivate audiences with his humor and charisma. In 2008, Tim decided to challenge himself by entering the competition American Gladiators. Although he did not make it to the final round, he tried his best and made it to the final audition round of the show. In September 2019, Tim took a new opportunity to attract attention and showcase his talent. The production team of the popular TV show Family Feud invited Tim and his family to participate. However, Becky could not join him because she was attending nursing school. Determined to make the most of the opportunity to participate in the show, Tim gathered his family, including his parents and brothers. Family Feud is a television game show where 2 families compete against each other by guessing the most popular answer from a survey of 100 people. Steve Harvey, the famous host of Family Feud, asked Tim, "What do you think is the most popular answer to the question, 'What's the biggest mistake you made at your wedding?'" Tim, known for his sense of humor, surprised Steve Harvey in the audience with his clever answer. He said, "Honey, I love you, but said I do." This statement was shocking and made the whole studio laugh. Although this answer was not expected, it still won second place on the leaderboard, earning Tim and his family many points. The Bleefnick family competed on Family Feud for 3 episodes, winning a total of $20,000. The prize money was divided equally among the family members. There was one notable exception, however. Tim did not share his reward with his wife, Becky. After many years of marriage, Becky and Tim's relationship began to strain. When Becky decided to become a nurse, Tim strongly objected. He said he was worried about Becky's health because nursing was often a high-stress job. Tim also noticed that Becky often had difficulty controlling her patience and stress when caring for the children. This made him worry about her ability to handle the job of a nurse. However, Becky's friends had a different view of Tim's reaction. They believed that Tim did not want Becky to be independent and free to pursue her own interests. Over time, they noticed that Becky was no longer as happy in the marriage as she had been before. Things were going well for the first 5 years, but then Tim began to act more controlling and manipulative towards Becky. Becky's friends noticed that while Becky was putting a lot of effort into her studies and nursing work, Tim was not contributing his fair share to the household chores. Tim did not participate in cleaning and taking care of their son. Instead, he left Becky to shoulder all the household chores after her long, tiring shifts at the hospital. Becky noticed that their marriage was struggling and wanted to work on this with Tim. She suggested that the two of them go to marriage counseling, hoping that this would help them improve the situation and mend their relationship. However, Tim refused this proposal, leaving Becky feeling disappointed. Although Becky tried her best to save their marriage, Tim had other intentions. In January 2012, after 11 years of marriage, Tim suddenly filed for divorce from Becky. This decision shocked Becky, as she had shown determination and effort to maintain the relationship. However, Tim's intentions were clear. He moved out of the house and into a new place on the other side of town. Tim explained that the main reason for his decision to divorce was due to the change in Becky's personality after she became a nurse. He found that her new career had significantly affected her behavior, causing a negative impact on their marriage. The divorce process was stressful. Tim and Becky could not find common ground and their relationship more deteriorated. During the divorce proceedings, Tim and Becky fought over a number of issues, including child custody, property division, and alimony. The situation became so tense that Tim filed for a protective order against Becky. He accused her of stalking and harassing him. Tim cited one specific incident. During in parent-teacher, Becky became aggressive and argued with him. As evidence, Tim provided a cell phone video of Becky banging on his car door outside the school after the conference. Becky, however, had a different view of the situation. She believed that Tim was the one who was harassing her. Becky texted her friends to share her concerns. In the messages, she described multiple instances of Tim's violent behavior, including yelling at her, pushing her in front of the children, and throwing things around the house. Becky sent a text message to a friend, expressing her deep concern about Tim's mental health. She noticed that Tim was becoming more hostile and unpredictable. Recently, a co-worker of Becky's was murdered by her partner, which made her even more fearful for her safety. Becky began to suspect that Tim might harm her, similar to what had happened to her co-worker. As a result, Becky sent a text message to her sister, saying that if anything happened to her, Tim would be the one to pay the most attention. Becky was worried that Tim would use force to gain custody of their child. This message made Becky's sister very worried about her sister's safety. She understood that Becky's fears were justified and that Becky needed immediate help. Out of concern for Becky's safety, her sister convinced her to seek help from the Domestic Violence Support Center. After some consideration, Becky decided to file for a protective order against Tim. After reviewing both Tim and Becky's requests for protective orders, the judge decided not to grant either of them. Instead, the judge ordered them to stay away from each other's homes, except to exchange custody of their children. On February 22, Becky and Tim's 3 sons, ages 12, 10, and 5, stayed overnight at Tim's house. Tim's house is about a mile from where Becky lives. The divorce proceedings between Becky and Tim are expected to be finalized within the next week. The next day, Tim called Becky's father. He explained that he had been unable to reach Becky and that she had not picked up her sons from school as usual. Becky's father, knowing that his daughter was devoted to her children, realized that something serious must have happened that had left Becky unable to perform her duties as a mother. Concerned about Becky's health, her father drove to her house immediately. When he arrived, he entered the house and walked through the rooms, calling Becky's name. Receiving no response, he went upstairs and entered his daughter's bedroom. Inside, he witnessed a horrifying scene: Becky lying motionless in a pool of blood, her body covered in gunshot wounds. Investigators arrived at Becky's house after her father discovered her body in the bathroom. Becky's body was lying on her back, covered in blood and showing no signs of life. Investigators began their investigation by thoroughly inspecting the exterior of the home. After a thorough search, they determined that the suspect had entered the home by forcing open an upstairs window in a child's bedroom. This discovery revealed that the suspect had used a porch chair to gain easy access to the home and onto the roof. Investigators followed the trail they believed the suspect had taken. They headed toward Becky's bedroom, where the door appeared to have been kicked in or forcefully broken. The damage to the bedroom door indicated that the suspect had entered the room, most likely to look for Becky. Evidence indicated that Becky attempted to hide in the bathroom, but the suspect followed and caught up with her. The suspect eventually shot Becky in the bathroom. While examining the crime scene around the bathroom where Becky's body was found, investigators stumbled upon her cell phone. When investigators examined Becky's phone, they found a call to 91126 at 1:11 a.m. This discovery helped them develop a theory about what happened that night. They believe that while being chased by the suspect in her home, Becky tried to call 911 for help, but in a panic, she mistakenly dialed 91126. Before Becky could call 911 again, investigators believe that the suspect grabbed the phone from her. The mistaken call occurred at 1:11 a.m., so they think Becky may have been murdered around that time. However, when police investigated Becky's neighborhood, no one remembered hearing any strange noises at that time. This raised suspicions for investigators. Since Becky had multiple gunshot wounds, it was unlikely that no one heard anything. When investigators thoroughly searched Becky's home, they quickly determined that the murder was not a burglary, as nothing was missing. However, the perpetrator left behind a number of important pieces of evidence. Most notably, a partial shoe print was found near the entrance. This shoe print could help identify the make and model of the suspect's shoes, as well as provide information about the size and shape of their feet. At the scene, investigators found 8 9mm bullet casings and several small pieces of plastic scattered on the floor near Becky's body. Despite the extensive evidence collected, investigators were still unable to come to a definitive conclusion. Therefore, they decided to send the collected evidence to a forensic lab for further analysis. Detectives are investigating whether any of Becky's neighbors had installed security cameras outside their homes. They discovered that a neighbor had installed a camera on the side of their house after their car was broken into a year ago. The camera was facing the neighbor's driveway, which bordered Becky's house. It was set up to detect motion and send an alert to the homeowner. However, on the night of Becky's death, the camera did not capture any important footage. As they investigated further, investigators discovered that on the day of the murder, a man was seen walking down the back path of Becky's house at 1:05 a.m. on the security camera footage. About 48 minutes later, the man was seen walking back in the opposite direction. Becky's neighbor's security camera also recorded a similar incident about a week earlier. On February 14th, footage from the neighbor's security camera showed Becky seeing a dark figure lurking around her house. After discovering this, Becky's neighbor immediately informed her of the news. After the neighbor reported the mysterious stranger, Becky began to feel anxious. Although she had not seen anyone on her house, she had heard noises in her backyard the night before, which frightened her. Police reviewed security camera footage from Becky's neighbors and continued to search the neighborhood for additional footage. They found video from a home near the Quiney bus stop that showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing moving toward Becky's home. The videos showed a bicyclist wearing dark clothing, matching the description of the mystery person in the footage of Becky's driveway. After analyzing the time of the footage, detectives suspected that the bicyclist was the person in the footage. Although Becky's neighbor's security cameras did not capture the mystery person on the night of her murder, police did stumble upon footage of a bicyclist heading toward Becky's home shortly before and after the incident. The video footage showed a person matching the description of the person lurking in Becky's driveway before she was murdered. While the video was helpful to the investigation, the poor quality of the footage made it difficult to gather details. Detectives were unable to determine the gender or identity of the person in the video due to the graininess of the image. However, they did notice one important detail: the bicycle the person was riding appeared to have no reflectors on its wheels. When Becky was murdered, her sister immediately thought of Tim, Becky's soon-to-be ex-husband, as a possible suspect. She had witnessed their tense divorce and shared this thought with the detectives investigating the case. Based on this information, the police began to consider Tim as the prime suspect. Notably, the murder occurred just a week before Becky and Tim finalized their divorce, making the situation particularly suspicious. During the investigation of Becky's murder, investigators made an important discovery. They found a bicycle without reflectors on its wheels, similar to the one seen on the security camera, just a block away from Tim's house. This discovery raised suspicions about Tim, prompting detectives to seek a search warrant for his home. When police executed the search warrant, Tim was cooperative and respectful. He willingly stood outside the home with the officers while investigators searched his property. On March 13, 2023, Tim was arrested and charged with Becky's murder 2 weeks earlier. When Tim's mugshot was released, Becky's family and friends were shocked by his appearance. Instead of the well-groomed man they knew, they saw a completely different Tim, unkempt and seemingly frail. Many believe that this change reflected the negative impact that the divorce had had on Tim. His unkempt hair and shabby clothes were a clear sign of the deterioration in his previously well-groomed appearance. The divorce was blamed for Tim's declining physical and mental health, according to friends and family. However, Tim explained that he had grown his hair long to take part in a charity campaign to raise awareness for cancer research. A clip from the Family Feud show in which Tim said he wished he had not married his wife when he was arrested for murdering her caused a stir. Many people saw this reaction as an uncanny sign of Tim's true feelings for his wife. Some even suggested it was a warning sign of potential problems in their relationship. Investigators carefully examined Tim's phone and discovered that he had created a fake Facebook account under the name John Smith. During the investigation, they discovered that Tim had been looking to buy a bicycle on Facebook. He was particularly interested in a blue Schwinn without reflectors on the wheels. This was notable because it matched the description of the bike found abandoned near Tim's home, just a block away. Despite the overwhelming evidence against Tim, convicting him was difficult. Tim was held without bail and ordered a speedy trial, requiring the prosecution to bring the case to trial within 90 days of his arrest. However, the prosecution faced a major challenge in convincing a jury of Tim's guilt, due to the lack of two key elements that are often considered decisive in criminal cases: a confession and DNA evidence. Without these two elements, proving Tim's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt became very difficult. In prosecuting Tim for his wife's murder, the prosecution faced a major challenge. 3 months after Becky was murdered in their home, Tim appeared in court on May 23, 2023. During the trial, the state presented evidence that investigators had collected at the scene. A key piece of evidence was the plastic debris found around Becky's body. The prosecution claimed that it was from an Aldi grocery bag. They also told the jury that several similar bags were found during a subsequent search of Tim's home. The prosecution alleged that Tim used the Aldi plastic bag as a silencer when he shot his ex-wife multiple times in order to muffle the sound of the gunfire and avoid detection. They claimed that Tim left DNA on the bags. An expert who testified said it was highly likely that the DNA found on the bags belonged to Tim. Prosecutors presented evidence to the jury about a crowbar found in Tim's basement that they believed could have been used to pry open a window at the victim's home on the night of her murder. However, an expert testified that although there were some slight similarities between the marks on the window and the crowbar, she could not say for certain that the crowbar was used in the crime. The prosecution presented several new pieces of evidence to bolster its case. They presented searches that Tim had conducted on his phone, including how to open a door with a crowbar, how to make a silencer for a homemade pistol, how to clean gunpowder off his hands, and the average response time for Quincy police. An expert was called to testify that she had compared the shell casings found at the crime scene to the shell casings found in Tim's home. She determined that 27 of the shell casings from Tim's home were fired from the same 9mm weapon used in the murder. When investigators searched Tim's home, they did not find Becky's 9mm gun. Tim claimed that he had not seen the gun for months before Becky was killed. During the trial, the defense did not call any witnesses. After a 6-day trial, the jury deliberated for 4 hours before finding Tim guilty. Ultimately, Tim was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Although Tim maintained his innocence and planned to appeal, Becky's family believed the sentence was deserved. Becky's sister spoke to Tim about the consequences of his actions on his sons, emphasizing that his choices had caused them pain. Even though Becky is gone, her sister promises to keep her memory alive in the hearts of her 3 sons. Hello again, true crime fans, we've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Cody Johnson. Cody Johnson was born on April 8, 1989, in San Jose, California. He grew up with his mother, Cher Johnson, with whom he had a very close relationship. In 2002, they moved to Kalispell, in northwestern Montana, a small resort town located in the Flathead Valley, between the lake of the same name and Glacier National Park. Cody spent much of his childhood exploring the natural beauty, taking long road trips with friends, and developing a passion for cars. According to friends and family, Cody was down-to-earth, approachable, charismatic, and altruistic. He was always willing to help people when he knew them well. Cody turned his childhood passion for cars into a thriving business. He first started modifying and upgrading cars for racing as a teenager, and later expanded it into a commercial car business. Today, Cody is a custom commercial car builder. He also worked at Nomad Communications with his uncle and a few friends who were also passionate about cars. Cody's life was almost perfect, except for someone to share it with. Cody was looking for a life partner. He had talked to friends about his desire to marry a church girl, and on Halloween 2011, he met Jordan, the woman who would change his life. Jordan Lynn Graham, born in August 1991, has lived in Kalispell with her family since she was a child. She grew up in a religious family and attended First Baptist Church, where she babysat and worked with families. Her life was rooted in faith, and her friends were all churchgoers. She dreamed of becoming a stay-at-home mom and raising a family. Jordan and Cody met on Halloween 2011 and immediately hit it off. Although initially shy, Jordan gradually opened up and started talking to Cody. She shared with him her dream of having a family and her love of nature and the outdoors. Jordan was very interested in Cody, but she was only 20 at the time and not ready for a serious relationship. They dated a few times, but remained friends. Things changed when Cody decided to pursue Jordan more seriously. He joined her church, First Baptist, and began attending her group. Soon, their casual relationship turned into something more, at least for one of them. They started dating officially in November 2011, and Cody was completely smitten with her. He admired her and wanted to be with her 24/7. According to Sher Johnson, after just a few weeks of dating, Cody was certain he wanted to marry Jordan. Even when Jordan told him she wanted to stay a virgin until marriage, he didn't change his mind. However, people close to them noticed that Jordan seemed less infatuated with Cody than before. Some suggested that this could be due to Cody's shyness, but others were concerned about the imbalance in their relationship. They did not show affection in public, did not hold hands, or flirt with each other. Jordan's friends were surprised when she accepted Cody's proposal in December 2012, after a year of dating. Although they thought she was not serious enough for marriage, they were still happy for her. In an Instagram post, Jordan showed off her new ring with the caption, "He proposed. Best early Christmas present ever." The wedding was scheduled for June 29, 2013, and planning began immediately. Cody was heavily involved, as was Kimberly Martinez, Jordan's best friend and maid of honor. Jordan, however, seemed to be the one who was most involved in the preparations for the wedding. She even performed a song that the couple had hired professional songwriter Elizabeth Shea to write. In retrospect, the lyrics seemed rather cold, almost foreboding. However, whenever Kimberly or anyone else mentioned actually marrying Cody, Jordan's mood worsened. She repeatedly asked Kimberly if she was doing the right thing. On the wedding day, she couldn't hide her true feelings about the marriage. She was very nervous, often looking down and seemingly not wanting to make eye contact with her husband during the wedding photos. However, Jordan seemed to calm down well, and by the time it came time for the first dance, she was completely focused on Cody. This happiness didn't last long. The morning after their wedding, Jordan texted her friend from the hotel where they were honeymooning. She hadn't consummated their marriage and had turned her husband down each night since their wedding. She shared her concerns with her friend, saying, "I know he's going to want to be intimate, but I'm really not interested." She also made an excuse, "My period started tonight. I really hope it works because if I'm pressured to do something, I'm going to freak out." It turned out that Jordan was extremely afraid of sex, and a mix of her faith and her true feelings for Cody made her anxious about being intimate with him. The pressure kept building until July 7th, 8 days after their wedding. Cody had planned to go golfing with friends but canceled at the last minute because Jordan had a surprise for him. After attending church and spending some private time at the lake, they joined a few friends for dinner at the local Dairy Queen. Cody went home with Jordan, and that was the last time anyone saw him. Cameron Fredrickson was the first to notice that Cody was missing. Cody was a model employee who always arrived on time before the workday began. However, when Cody still hadn't shown up well into the workday, Cameron decided to visit Cody's new house, which he had bought with Jordan before their wedding. After knocking for some time without a response, Cameron grew concerned and decided to enter the house. Finding no one inside, he began to search for clues about Cody and Jordan's whereabouts. Unfortunately, his search yielded little information. Cameron's concern turned into fear when he discovered Cody's phone in the garage. He immediately realized something was amiss because Cody never went anywhere without his phone, and leaving it behind might indicate that something terrible had occurred. After making several calls, Cameron learned that no one had seen him since the dinner at Dairy Queen at 8:30. He immediately went to the police station to file a missing persons report. and the authorities treated the case seriously from the start. Cameron's distress emphasized the seriousness of the situation. Officer Chaz Zimmerman was among the first to question Cameron. He found it unusual that it was the boss who reported the person missing, rather than the wife. Later that day, Kimberly finally reached Jordan. When she asked about the situation, Jordan explained that she had seen Cody leaving with some friends in a black car with Washington license plates. She mentioned that on their way back from the restaurant, Cody received a phone call that upset him greatly, so she thought it would be best to give him some space. However, later that night, she went to the garage to retrieve her phone charger, which she claimed she had left in their car. On her way back from the car, she received a text from Cody saying he was going to take a ride with some friends visiting from out of town. She informed the police, just as she had told Kimberly, that she didn't know who these friends were. But Cody often mentioned taking his visitors to Glacier Park. She explained to the police that she didn't recognize any of the men and that there had been no argument that night. Regarding Cody's disappearance, Jordan said she assumed he was out joyriding with his friends. When the police asked why she hadn't reported him missing, she said she didn't want to upset him if he returned in a few hours. 48 hours after Cody disappeared, his and Jordan's friends and families gathered at their home, expressing confusion about Cody's behavior. It was unlike him to leave without telling anyone where he was going. Despite this, Jordan insisted on her story until Kimberly challenged her. As the meeting continued, Jordan appeared increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, she became so upset that she threw her wedding ring across the room. While some thought it was a strange reacting mechanism, Kimberly believed something more was happening. She called her friend when she got home. The following day, Jordan was summoned to the station, where the officers questioned her about the inconsistencies in her story. One officer said, "I'm noticing some discrepancies between what you're telling me and the information I've gathered from others." He continued, "I've talked to a few people, and it's crucial for me to know you're being truthful." Jordan responded, I understand. However, the officer insisted, "I believe there's more to it." Sher Johnson met with the police that day, carrying Cody's phone records from the day he disappeared. Concerned about her son, she hoped the mysterious person Cody had called would provide clues about his whereabouts. However, it turned out to be a friend from the car community calling to return a tool to Cody. This friend was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he had a strong alibi. His wife was in labor when Cody went missing. With all leads exhausted, the police refocused on Jordan, who had a story that didn't quite make sense. The breakthrough they needed came on July 10th. A mysterious email from Carmentoni 607 arrived, claiming Cody was dead and the search could be called off. The email said, "Hello Jordan, my name is Tony. There is no need to look for Cody anymore. He is gone." Jordan showed her best friend Hannah the email, Jordan face expressionless, and explained what Carmentoni 607 claimed had happened to Cody. Allegedly, he had slipped and fallen off a cliff in Glacier National Park with his mysterious friends. Hannah was almost overwhelmed when she read the message. She urged a lethargic Jordan to report it to the police. "I'm freaking out." "What are you talking about?" Hannah exclaimed. "I read the email, and it says Cody's gone." "Jordan, any reaction?" Jordan wasn't crying at all. "She just showed me the email, and I started shaking. I insisted she go to the police, and eventually, she did. But I was hurrying her, urging her to go instead of just standing there looking at me." Instead of settling the police investigation, the email only increased their paranoia. It seemed suspiciously convenient that an anonymous email would provide the information they desperately needed and suggest ending the search. Detective Corey Clark was most disturbed not by the details of the message but by Jordan's lack of emotion. She seemed unaffected by a message that essentially confirmed her husband's death. After reading the email, for looking for Cody, Jordan decided to visit Glacier National Park. She led a car with her foster brother Michael and her close friend Hannah to the Sun Road, a 30 m stretch of narrow winding path leading up to a treacherous mountain overlook. Throughout the trip, Hannah noted that Jordan seemed unusually cheerful. On the way, Jordan waved her hand out the window. They didn't find anything on the first day, but on the second day, Jordan unexpectedly discovered Cody's body. Among all the cliffs and roads, Jordan guided them to this specific one, insisting on her intuition despite many recommendations from Michael and Hannah. At the summit, they parked and began hiking the loop trail. This trail was notably steep and ascended to a 200-foot cliff that provided a view of a deep ravine. Jordan skillfully reached the top, maneuvering past sharp rocks to the cliff's very edge, overlooking the ravine. As she looked down, she tossed a rock and remarked, "I think he's down there." It took a particularly brave FBI agent tying himself to a tree and leaning over the edge, and the aid of several emergency services and a helicopter to confirm and extract the body at the bottom of the ravine. The body belonged to Cody Johnson, a newlywed car enthusiast, businessman, and pillar of the community. The question now was how Cody ended up there, and what did his wife, Jordan, and the mysterious Carmen Tony 607 have to do with it? Who were the mysterious out-of-town friends that were with Cody when he fell? These were the questions that hounded the Kalispell Police Department for days to come. According to the coroner's report, Cody's head and arms were the most severely damaged from the fall. Cody's family and friends were devastated by his death, while Hannah noticed that Jordan seemed relieved. Now that Cody's body had been found, the police would close the investigation. However, the identity of Carmen Tony 607 was still unclear. When asked about the message, Jordan introduced them to Tony Stalkup, a friend of Cody's who was a car enthusiast. Although Tony had not seen Cody in a long time, he was willing to let them access Cody's account. However, they could not find the necessary email address, and neither Jordan nor Cody's phone records provided much useful information. As a result, they were forced to contact Google to request the IP address of Carmen Tony 607's account. While waiting for more information, the police interviewed Cody's family and friends again. During this process, Kimberly eventually revealed to the police about Jordan's premarital mood swings. Jordan had repeatedly asked Kimberly if she should marry Cody. She also expressed her fears and concerns about having sex with him. Jordan regretted marrying Cody and wished she could end the marriage. Kimberly advised her to have a frank conversation with Cody about her feelings. She texted Kimberly that she was unhappy when she should have been, and was worried that speaking up would hurt Cody. 2 days before Cody went missing, she wrote that he had been aggressive and blunt with her. On July 7th, she planned to talk to him but was afraid of his reaction. After the conversation, she went to Kimberly's house and told him that things were not going well. Cody was very angry and agitated, so she decided to leave so he could calm down. She slept over at her step-parents' house that night. When the police learned of this, Jordan became the prime suspect, and the news from Google arrived at the same time. The Google results confirmed that the Carmen Tony 607 email address had been created on Jordan's stepfather's computer. A brief interview with Jordan's family members identified Jordan as the email's creator, but this was not enough to convict her. However, Cody and Jordan's cell phone records helped the police gather evidence. Cell towers indicated that they had been in Glacier National Park the night Cody went missing. Furthermore, surveillance cameras had also captured the couple entering Glacier National Park at 9:17 p.m., contradicting Jordan's claim that she was not with her husband that night. Now only Jordan knows the answer. When the police called Jordan in to present evidence, she broke down. She finally told the detective her testimony of what had happened. She said she confessed her feelings about the marriage to Cody, and they had a big fight. As a result, the two decided to travel to Glacier National Park and headed for the loop. She explained that she pushed Cody and he fell. She said she felt pressured and angry. Her story ended without a clear confession, but hinted at the blindfold incident. Jordan claimed that Cody's death was accidental and that she had not planned the attack. When asked about the plan, she replied that she had no intention of killing Cody. However, she admitted that in a situation full of strong emotions and anxiety, she took the action of pushing Cody off the cliff without any prior planning. Specifically, Jordan said that Cody turned his back to her, facing the cliff, and she approached him, using both hands to push him off the cliff. Jordan also admitted to creating a private account and sending messages. In an unexpected turn of events, Jordan was allowed to leave the police station without being charged. However, the police later arrested her at Cody's funeral on July 22. There was a rumor that Jordan killed Cody because she wanted to end her marriage. It was assumed that she did not want to back out because she did not want to lose face for herself and her family. If Cody died, she wouldn't have to go through the divorce process. Jordan's behavior at Cody's funeral raised further suspicions, and many began to wonder if Jordan really loved Cody. Jordan faced charges of second-degree murder and making false statements. After reviewing her case, the jury added a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder. Her trial commenced on December 9, 2013. From the beginning, the prosecution aggressively challenged Jordan's account. As the trial progressed, her situation became increasingly difficult. The prosecutors scrutinized her story, focusing on key issues such as why she had deceived Cody's friends and family about her involvement and apparent lack of remorse. Cody's family and loved ones provided portraying her as an unfeeling wife who killed her husband to end their marriage. Although her defense team claimed self-defense, the argument was not convincing. Instead, Jordan chose to accept a plea deal. Under the agreement, she pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for the prosecution dismissing the first-degree murder charge. As a result, she received a 30-year prison sentence with no possibility of parole. Before her sentencing, Jordan tried to take back her guilty plea after learning the prosecution would pursue a more serious charge of premeditated first-degree murder, which could result in a 50-year sentence. U.S. District Judge Donald Malloy then had to decide whether to accept her original plea or grant her a new trial. On December 13, 2013, Jordan Graham received a 30-year, 5-month prison sentence and a $16,917 fine. She will not be eligible for release until she is over 52 years old. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Zoe Hastings. Zoe Hastings was born on November 21, 1996 in Kansas, the oldest of 5 siblings, including 3 sisters and a brother. Zoe helped her parents take care of her younger siblings, willing to cancel any plans if her parents needed help. Her parents were very religious, so the family spent a lot of time at church. At some point, Zoe's family moved to Dallas, where she attended a high school specializing in the arts and creativity. This environment nurtured her passion for painting and encouraged her to participate in school theater productions. Outside of school, Zoe continued to pursue her creativity by working at a local art studio in Dallas. She also worked as a lifeguard at a community pool during the summer months. After graduating from high school, Zoe had the opportunity to attend some of the country's top universities. Instead, she decided to postpone her studies and focus on her church. In October 2015, at the age of 18, Zoe was preparing to go on a church mission trip and was looking forward to it. On Sunday, October 11th, she planned to attend a service where they would discuss the details of the trip. Zoe took the family car, promised her parents she would be home for dinner, and left home around 4:40 p.m. The church was only a few miles away, and her parents expected her to return around 6:30 p.m. However, as time passed and Zoe did not return home for dinner, her family began to worry. This was out of character for her, and they had not been able to reach her via text or phone call. They tried to contact her friends and family members, thinking she might have stopped by to visit, but no one had seen her. As their concern turned to alarm, her parents called the church, hoping to find an explanation for her absence. Instead, they were shocked to learn that Zoe had not attended the service. Her parents grew even more concerned and decided to contact the police. They called 911. But for some reason, the police did not come to their house, so her parents drove to the police station themselves, filed a report, and began searching for their daughter. Despite following the route from their home to the church several times, they found no trace of Zoe. The search continued throughout the night. When morning came, Zoe's mother remembered that her daughter's iPhone had a tracking app that could reveal her location. Using the app, they discovered that Zoe's phone was near a small creek, just a few hundred yards from the church. Her parents immediately went to the location. They were horrified to see a large number of police cars, as well as ambulances and emergency services. When they approached one of the police officers, they explained that they were looking for their daughter, and the officer informed them that there had been a car accident a few hours earlier. Police told her parents that a dog walker called the police after being alerted to the accident by a passerby. The passerby told the dog walker that there was an injured woman near the creek. The dog walker then ran to the scene, found the woman lying in a pool of blood, and called 911. The officer quickly identified the deceased as Zoe Hastings. They immediately realized that she had not died in an accident. It was clear from the first glance that she had been the victim of a murder. Zoe's body was found a few hundred yards from the partially submerged minivan in the creek. A significant amount of blood was found near her body, along with multiple cuts to her neck. Her skirt had been pulled up and her underwear pulled down, suggesting that the killer may have also sexually assaulted her. Zoe's parents attempted to approach their daughter but were stopped by police. After investigating, the police discovered some important evidence. Notably, all the doors of the minivan, except for the driver's side door, were locked. This detail suggests that the perpetrator may have driven or approached Zoe directly at the scene. A bloody knife, believed to be the murder weapon, was found by the police near the creek, near an embankment under the bridge. Zoe's smartphone provided important information that helped the police reconstruct the sequence of events. GPS data showed that she arrived at the creek at 5:01 p.m., just 20 minutes after leaving her home. It appears that she was killed shortly after arriving. In addition, the police also discovered that after leaving her home, Zoe made one stop. She went to a DVD rental service near the local Walgreens to return a movie. While forensic experts were examining the body, police decided to look for potential witnesses who were in or near the store at the same time as Zoe. After interviewing several people, they found two potential witnesses. One was Lester Clark, who worked at a nearby tattoo parlor. He had come into the store around 4:45 p.m. to buy cigarettes and saw a woman near the DVD rental area. He then saw her walk back to the parking lot and try to get into a white pickup truck. A man approached her, stopped her from opening the door, said something, and then the two got into the truck and drove away. When the police showed Lester a photo of Zoe, he said the woman looked similar. Although he found the scene quite tense, he didn't think much of it, as it didn't seem like anything bad had happened. The witness described the man as short, stocky, and African American. However, Lester was too far from the parking lot to notice any other features. Later, as it got dark, he saw the man walking toward the store alone. A second witness, Gary Whitman, a homeless man, reported a similar incident. At approximately 4:45 p.m., he was standing across the parking lot when he saw a woman approaching a white pickup truck. A man suddenly appeared from behind her, blocking her from getting into the vehicle. The man then showed the woman something he had taken from his pocket. The woman then got into the car and moved into the passenger seat, while the man got into the driver's seat and drove away. Gary described the suspect similarly to Lester. While police were interviewing witnesses, forensic experts made several important discoveries. A forensic pathologist examined the victim and found a small amount of male DNA, not enough for a full DNA analysis. This finding supported the theory that the perpetrator had sexually assaulted Zoe before killing her. A separate examination of Zoe's car did not find anyone else's fingerprints on the door or steering wheel. This was surprising, as witness testimony suggested that the suspect may have driven the victim out of the store's parking lot in her small car. However, police believe that the killer wiped the steering wheel and door handles after the crime to remove any evidence. Several hairs were found on Zoe's body, but they were too small for experts to extract a complete DNA sample. However, a breakthrough came when they tested a knife found near the crime scene. A DNA sample was found on the knife and uploaded to the FBI database, resulting in a match. The DNA belonged to Antonio Cochran, 34, a man with a lengthy criminal record that began as a teenager, including arrests for burglary, assault, and home invasion. In 2014, Antonio had a history of being suspected of multiple crimes. One notable case involved his girlfriend's 17-year-old daughter, who accused him of sexual assault. She reported that Antonio offered to drive her, but instead of taking her to her destination, he drove her to a remote wooded area. There, he threatened to kill her if she tried to escape and then attacked her. After his arrest, Antonio claimed that the encounter was consensual. The case went to trial, where the prosecution failed to present enough evidence to prove Antonio's guilt, resulting in a not guilty verdict. Police identified Antonio as the prime suspect after finding his DNA on the knife and arrested him. During questioning, Antonio repeatedly denied any involvement in the murder. To gather further evidence, police compared Antonio's DNA to hair and semen found on Zoe. However, the samples were too small to extract a full DNA profile. Police analyzed Antonio's smartphone and discovered a series of text messages that revealed his unstable mental state on the day of the murder. At 1:48 a.m. the day before Zoe died, Antonio texted a friend who lived with him, saying he was moving out and would never see her again. Later that day, at 2:07 p.m., he texted his ex-girlfriend to say that his stepmother had died. He mentioned that she had died right in front of him and that he was having a hard time coming to terms with the loss. In the following hours, Antonio sent 2 text messages to another woman, saying that he had spent the night drinking, driving around the city and crying. These were his last text messages before Zoe died. That evening, at 9:30 p.m., Antonio texted his friend again, expressing his confusion about what to do with his life and lamenting that things had gotten worse. The next day, Antonio sent another text to his ex-girlfriend, saying that his life was over and that she would soon find out why. A check of Antonio's browser search history showed that he had visited local news websites more than 30 times before his arrest, often checking the crime section. Notably, 5 of these visits were to read articles specifically about Zoe's case. Data from Antonio's smartphone provided another lead for police. Experts retrieved GPS data from his phone and discovered that at 4:34 p.m., his phone connected to a cell tower that covered the area of a store. This coincided with the time Zoe was there, but this data wasn't considered strong evidence as it only indicated that his phone was within a few miles of the tower. The police discovered that Antonio had started working at a grocery store just 3 days before the incident. However, he had not shown up for work on Monday, the day after the murder, without providing any explanation. Despite the long list of circumstantial evidence against Antonio, the only strong evidence was his DNA on the handle of the knife. However, such evidence is usually not enough to convict because simply holding the knife does not prove murder. For example, He could have used the knife in other situations and someone else could have used it to commit the crime. But the police could not find any other evidence, so they decided to proceed and take the case to court. The prosecution presented an account of the events that took place that day. According to their account, when Zoe returned to her car in the parking lot, Antonio approached her, pulled out a knife, and threatened her to get in the car. He then took control of the car and drove away. The prosecution's case also included text messages that Antonio had sent before the murder, which showed that he was distraught due to the death of his stepmother. According to police, Antonio had been drinking heavily when he decided to kidnap and attack Zoe. He chose Zoe only because she was in the parking lot at the time. Antonio drove to a secluded creek surrounded by trees, where he forced Zoe out of the car, attacked her, and stabbed her 6 times in the neck. He then tried to drive into the creek to hide the evidence. But it was only partially submerged. Antonio wiped the steering wheel and door handles to remove fingerprints before fleeing the scene. According to the first witness, a man resembling Antonio was seen walking back to the store's parking lot that evening. However, the defense argued that most of the evidence did not directly link Antonio to the crime. For example, a hair and semen analysis only showed that Antonio could not be ruled out as the source, but did not confirm his involvement. The defense also argued that the DNA on the knife did not necessarily mean that Antonio was involved in the murder. They suggested that Antonio could have come into contact with the knife in another situation, such as when he worked at a movie theater and had to collect items left by customers. Furthermore, if someone else had used the knife from the movie theater to kill someone, it would have been difficult for them to avoid getting Antonio's DNA off the handle. The defense questioned the credibility of Gary, a homeless man who was the second witness, because he had an active arrest warrant for violating the terms of his parole. The defense attempted to exclude his testimony, but the prosecution disagreed. They argued that Gary's voluntary contact with the police, despite orders from him, showed that he genuinely wanted to help. Gary said he was just trying to do the right thing, even though he knew he would be arrested. Antonio's attorneys attempted to establish an alibi for their client, claiming that he was helping a friend at the time of Zoe's murder. However, they failed to present substantial evidence to support this claim. The prosecution initially sought the death penalty for Antonio, but as the trial progressed, it became clear that the evidence was not strong enough to achieve that outcome. The prosecution subsequently dropped its request for the death penalty. After a lengthy deliberation, the jury returned a guilty verdict and Antonio was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. Zoe's parents expressed their gratitude to the police and those involved in the trial for bringing justice to their daughter's case.